or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Well, we're talking about holidays now and how not to pay too much for them. Because I think the thing is, a lot of people are saying, oh, we're going to go on holidays. And then they look and they say, really, can we afford it?
Yeah.
And if people pushed the boat out last year, they're maybe finding that this year they just can't do it because it definitely is more expensive. Hayley Sparks joins us in the studio now to tell us the tricks of the trade. And you feel, Hayley, that all is not lost. You think if you shop around, you apply a few tricks, you can do OK for yourself?
Yeah, I definitely love to share some of my tips with the viewers because everybody deserves a holiday, but with the cost of living, we want to kind of see where we can save money. So one of my biggest tips would be to use a travel consultant. They work for you for free, so there's no cost to the consumer. But what I didn't realise till I joined the travel industry is about 60% of the world's holidays are trade only, so you wouldn't find them online. So if you work with a professional, they can help do all the research for you. So some of the hotspots at the moment, Poland, for example, is one of the most affordable European destinations. Other really up-and-coming destinations, you've got places like Albania, Bulgaria, great alternatives to Greece. You've only got to have a look online at the stunning coastlines. And another top tip to consider is a cruise. Now, people often think, wow, cruises, you think luxury, you think, you know, sort of bucket list, but that is not the case. The cruise market is so extensive. So there's great budget entry-level cruise lines, which are fantastic for families. You know what you're paying for. There's no hidden charges. And different brands like MSC, for example, they'll do single-parent discounts.
GB News, the People's Channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show,
this winter, 9 million pensioners will now receive the winter fuel payment.
Yeah, after a massive backlash and a battering at the local elections today, Chancellor Rachel Reeves did a huge U-turn on the winter fuel allowance. 9 million OAPs will now get the payment. But will pensioners forgive the Labour Party and forget? Or is the damage done?
I believe we can make Wales much, much better than it's been after 26 years of continuous and failing Labour rule.
Today, Nigel Farage promised to put Welsh people first by reopening the Port Talbot steel plant and coal mines, and also making sure that locals get housing before asylum seekers. I'll be joined in the studio by Lee Anderson to ask him, can reform really make Wales great again? And shocking new figures seen by GB News reveal that Britain's £4.7 billion annual bill to keep immigrants in hotels takes every penny of tax from an astonishing 582,000 British taxpayers. That is a city the size of Manchester. The report's author will join me on the show to tell me this is simply unsustainable. And Israeli authorities have intercepted Greta Thunberg's Freedom Flotilla, which they called the selfie yacht, saying, Greta, the party's over. Well, Greta and co will now be ordered to watch videos of the October the 7th Hamas atrocities. Should we just let them into Gaza and left them there while we're at it? And
have released factual statistics showing that 1 in 4 sex crimes is committed by foreign nationals here in the UK, and considering they only make up 6% of the population, this is incredibly disproportionate.
Yes, a new campaign group claims that immigrants are responsible for a quarter of all sex crimes in Britain, despite only making up 6% of the population. On today's show, I'll be joined by that brave young member of the Women's Safety Initiative who says we're protecting women where Parliament has failed. And that's all coming up in your next hour. The show, it's a pleasure to have your company today. So, a screeching U-turn on the winter fuel allowance. 10 million pensioners were set to miss out. Now 9 million will get it. But we were told that would cause a run on the pound. What's changed? Or is this a politically motivated U-turn after that drubbing at the local elections? On today's show, I'll be joined by the individual, you remember, who started that amazing song, Freezing This Christmas. He's jubilant to what happened, although it cost him his job. We'll also be joined by a campaigner from the pensionervote.com. And I want to ask him, he's got up-to-the-minute data. Will this change the way that British people think and vote, or is the damage done? I want to hear from you. GBNews.com/your say is the way to do it. It's time for your headlines, and it's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and a very good afternoon to you. Fast approaching 4 minutes past 3. The top story. Well, 9 million pensioners are set to receive the winter fuel payment. In a statement, the Chancellor has announced that all pensioners in England and Wales with an income of or below £35,000 a year will benefit. It extends eligibility to over 3/4 of all pensioners. But no one will need to take any action, as they will automatically receive the payments if eligible. Nigel Farage has called for Port Talbot's blast furnaces to reopen after they were shut down last year. On a visit to the Welsh town, the Reform UK leader said the resumption of traditional steelmaking should be a long-term ambition for the country. That's as his party sets its sights on the Welsh elections in 2026.
So I'm here today to say that our campaign for Senedd next May starts in earnest today. We've got a lot to do. We've got to raise money, we've got to find 96 calibre candidates to stand on those lists, and we've got to have a proper campaign plan. And I want to make it absolutely clear. Our aim is very simple. Our aim is to win. Our aim is to win a majority, and our aim as a party is to govern in Wales. And I believe that it is achievable.
Secondary school pupils will be taught skills in artificial intelligence as part of a drive to put the technological power into the hands of the next generation. Those were the words of the Prime Minister in a speech this morning, announcing around 1 million students will be given access to learning resources to start equipping them for the tech careers of the future. It's all as part of the government's £180 million Tech First scheme.
With the new Tech First training programme, that's up to 1 million young people trained in tech skills that will be so crucial for their future. That's a £185 million investment, embedding AI right through our education system, starting in our secondary schools with subjects like computer science.
Policing is expected to receive an above-inflation boost in the spending review this week after 11th-hour cabinet negotiations over the weekend. The Chancellor says she is prepared to announce real terms increases to budgets for the service every year as she sets out spending plans for the next 3 years this Wednesday. The expected increase comes after 2 senior policing figures publicly warned Rachel Reeves that the service is broken and forces are left with no choice but to cut staff to save money. National Guard troops are still in Los Angeles as the city is bracing for another, now the 3rd day of rioting over raids on undocumented migrants. The National Guard troops have been guarding federal government buildings as police and protesters clashed in separate demonstrations. The state's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom has called the move unlawful as Donald Trump became the first US leader in 60 years to deploy the National Guard without a request from the state's governor. Meanwhile, a sweeping new travel ban introduced by Donald Trump has now come into force today, blocking entry to nationals from 12 countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, Libya and Somalia. The president cited last month's attack at a pro-Israel event in Boulder, Colorado, as justification, though the suspect was Egyptian and Egypt is not on the list. Critics say the move is politically charged, while the White House insists it's about national security. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in around half an hour's time. Now, though, it's over to Westminster and Martin.
Thank you, Sam. Now, the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, has today said that his party will be the only real competitor to Labour in the Welsh elections next May. Reform has pledged to defy the governments to reopen coal mines in Wales if the party wins power next year. Mr Farage also took a fiery swipe at the Labour Party, saying they're in blind panic, and took credit for the government's winter fuel payments U-turn announcement earlier on today. Well, I'm joined in the studio here in Westminster by GBNews' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, welcome to the show. Your chopper today.
I am indeed.
Is having a day off. Sadly, his pet dog died. It was a huge U-turn today, and one which many felt that should never have been forced in the first place by anybody's reckoning. Axing the winter fuel allowance now has turned out to be one of the biggest disasters of the Labour Party's tenure thus far. Easily its poll tax moment. Tell us, what do you think forced the Chancellor's hand?
Oh, I mean, just what you've just described. They saw what happened at the local elections. They saw what happened at the by-election. People on the doorstep were constantly saying the winter fuel allowance was the big thing. It was clearly a mistake right from the start. I mean, if you remember, I've always said I wanted to see it taxed rather than taken away. So rich pensioners just don't get it. Now, substantially, that's what Rachel Reeves has done today. So now we have a system whereby everybody who has an income of less than 35,000, they will get their winter fuel allowance, £200 for under 70s, and £300 for over 80s. What I imagine will happen, some of the details are yet to come out, but it'll be then clawed back rather than the same way they did with child benefit. When one earner hits £80,000, you lose all your child benefit. Same thing applies here.
Why bother doing it in the first place? I mean, when they've rearranged the deck chairs here, so they're going to save around about £450 million. Now, that's no small sum of money, but we were told that difficult decisions had to be made, otherwise the black hole would consume the entire country, and more to the point, specifically about this, there'll be a run on the pound. Clearly, that wasn't the case, was it?
No, it wasn't the case.
We were told a porky. Let's be frank.
Well,
or something drastically changed since then?
No, not so much drastically changed. I mean, the idea was to raise by next year £1.5 billion. So that was not an insignificant amount of money. And Rachel Reeves argued that it had to come from somewhere. This was the one place where she should get it, and so she did. Now we're probably down. I mean, I'm not even sure they'll get 450 million. I think they're more down to about 250 million they'll take from this. So it's not a money saver. I mean, the answer is no, they shouldn't have done it in the first place. It was a mistake. I think they underestimated the backlash from pensioners and from other people. And again, it was on the doorstep. It's people of all ages were saying this was unfair. And Labour, if it's anything, should be the party of fairness.
Except the voting record stands for all time. It's totally transparent. Every single Labour Party MP was whipped into voting for it with a handful of abstentions. The big question is, will this haunt them? Will people forgive and forget? You know, we still have a few years, 4 years perhaps, till a general election. You could argue it's the sensible, it's the pragmatic, it's the reactionary thing to do a U-turn when you've got things wrong. But will people forgive and forget, or will they think, no, I'll tell you what, they singled pensioners out and they've only done a U-turn because they got their backsides kicked mightily in May?
Yes, I mean, whether people forget or not, I don't know. I think it's probably unlikely, although if you remember, the Tories did come back from the poll tax. The poll tax was incredibly divisive under Margaret Thatcher. They got rid of Margaret Thatcher, got rid of the poll tax, and John Major won the subsequent election. So I think that there is certainly a way back. It is also right that when you realise you've made a mistake, correct it as soon as possible. And that's what's happened in this case. The argument will be, look, it's a question of judgment. They should not have made that judgment in the first place. Yes, it is damaging. I don't think it's terminal, though.
All right, now, before we move on to our next guest on this story, could we have a quick talk about reform in Wales?
Sure.
Earlier today, so make Wales great again, put the Welsh people first. Nigel Farage making a big pitch there, ahead, of course, 1 year away from now, of the Welsh elections, which at the moment the pollsters fancy fancy reform to do very, very well in.
Yeah, and it may well be that they could end 26 years of Labour government. At the moment, the Welsh Parliament really is on a knife edge. That you've got 60 members there, but only 30 of them are Labour, so they're relying on other people to get legislation through. So Nigel Farage should do very well next year. Not quite so sure about opening up the coal mines. Opening up Port Talbot, but with ordinary furnaces, not the electric arc furnaces which you need. Obviously, it will create jobs, but that net zero will go out the window.
There were some really interesting policies which haven't really been picked up on widely yet, because the Port Talbot, you're correct, and the coal mines getting a lot of the oxygen. But he also said there would be a clampdown to make sure that Welsh people were at the front of the social housing queue, and also end funding of the Wales Refugee Council, and also end the nation of sanctuary for asylum seekers and any funding that goes with it. Nigel Nelson, that is the clearest statement of intent we've seen yet, that the current asylum policy of redistribution around the country, often Labour-run councils getting nice backhanders to make sure that they go to parts of the country, is going to end in Wales if reform get in. That is a significant policy announcement.
It would be, and it would cause all sorts of problems. That at the moment, I mean, if you look at say my home county, Kent, we're on the front line. That's where you get all the Channel crossings coming in, an awful lot of unaccompanied kids. What Kent try and do is distribute those throughout the country because they really can't cope with what they've got. If reform get control, turn around and say, we can't take these people anymore, where do they go?
Well, the problem is, close the borders. This is the point. Like, if reform are voted in on that basis, then they would be able to say, no, people in Wales have voted not to take problems created by politicians who can't control our borders. You can go away and deal with it. That's the point. It's a clear policy. Whether people go for it or not remains to be seen. Nigel Nelson, a pleasure as always. Great start to the show. Now, back to that story of the winter fuel allowance being U-turned on today. Go back to Christmas. Do you remember this?
It'll be freezing this Christmas while Keir Starmer's warm.
Yes, it was the People's number one, if not the official number one, and that song, penned by Chris Middleton and Dean Ager, it criticises the Prime Minister's decision to cut winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners, well, in what many will consider an embarrassing U-turn. Chancellor Rachel Reeves has axed it, and I'm delighted to say I'm now joined by the creator of that viral sensation Christmas song, Freezing This Christmas. It's Chris Middleton. Chris, welcome to the show. So, you must be very, very happy. This is a significant change of position. You wore your heart on your sleeve, you pumped this single out, and it seems all these months later to have had an impact.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and nice to speak to you again, Martin. Yeah, of course, I'm delighted by this. I would, I'd love to take credit for it, of course, but I don't think really the song maybe did that much. We tried to shame the government into action. And they've only done it now because they're getting trounced by reform in the polls. They've not done it out of the kindness of their hearts. I'd love to say it was because of the song. I'd love to say it was because of me, but call me a cynic. I think they've done it just to try and claw back some votes.
Chris, you've obviously been speaking with pensioners throughout your song, throughout your campaign, and no doubt since then. And by the way, it's worth pointing out to people on GB News, we told your story before of how you believe the BBC, because you're a newscaster with the BBC, a freelance newscaster, they didn't renew your contract because of your political position. So this has taken its toll financially and professionally on you. So let's remember that. You really did put your money where your mouth is. But do you think, speaking with pensioners, that this U-turn will erase this from history, erase it from their memories, or will the memory long linger on that pensioners were thrown under the bus?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where it will linger on. These things stick in people's mind, and hopefully maybe the song is one of those things that will help this stick in people's mind. Then, as I say, they're not doing it out of the kindness of their own heart. They're doing it cynically to try and get more votes, and people can see that. The British people aren't stupid, even though the politicians sometimes like to think that they are. And even though they've now U-turned on it, this will stick with people, and it's just one of the many, many disastrous decisions and lies that this government's told. So whether it's this or whether it's one of the, count them, dozens of other things that they've done, I can't see this really winning them back many votes, to be honest with you.
Chris Middleton, what a lot of people will be confused about today, perhaps you, certainly me, is we were told at the time that if we didn't make these tough decisions to fill that £22 billion black hole, there would be a run on the pound. The economy would crash. Plagues of locusts would sweep across the country. It was Project Fear at Christmas. Suddenly, that's not the case, Chris. Does that make you think that, well, has something radically changed and we suddenly found a pot of gold on Jeremy Corbyn's allotment? Or was this all smoke and mirrors all along?
No, of course not. That was just a lie to essentially try and get people to believe it. I mean, don't forget, this was never in their manifesto. They never said they would do this. And it was one of the first things that they did after getting into government, just 3 weeks later. So you can't tell me that within that 3 weeks, that's when they came up with this. They obviously knew before the election they were going to do this, and it wasn't in the manifesto. So, you know, they've tried to spoon feed us these lies. There'll be a run on the pound. There's this £22 billion black hole. We have to do this. But people just don't buy it. And it especially makes no sense when the government's also massively increased borrowing by tens and tens of billions. They've increased taxes by tens and tens of billions. But yet apparently we need to, you know, freeze a few pensioners in order to save less than £1 billion. People just don't buy it. It doesn't make any sense. And I think people just see right through it, to be honest, Martin.
I think on the positive note, this will be in place for this Christmas, so there won't be any need for you to pen a follow-up to freezing this Christmas. But, Chris, you've got a bit of a knack for it. Any ideas or inspiration about what your next Christmas number one attempt might be?
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm glad that they have U-turned, although it would have been fun to maybe release the song again. I'm going to have to go away and think of something else to do now. Fortunately for me, they've given me a lot of material, haven't they? Whether it's, you know, the inheritance tax for farmers, the VAT on the schools, the lack of free speech in the country, giving away the Chagos Islands. I mean, you know, the list goes on and on and on. I could do a whole album this Christmas, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, I was about to say not so much a single as an album. Now, Chris, I know it's not about you. I know you're a very humble and modest individual, but are you all right, mate? Is everything, has your life got back to normal since that blizzard at Christmas?
Oh, I appreciate that, Martin. Yeah, I mean, somewhat. Obviously, it was a massive whirlwind, that sort of whole December period. So my life's gone back to sort of a bit of quiet normality since then. Obviously, I lost my job working with the BBC. So now I'm an independent journalist. I'm doing my own thing. If you fancy seeing what I'm getting up to next, helping me out, give me a follow on X, at Chris Mid, if you fancy. I'll still be there doing my independent journalism, still trying to hold this government to account.
Well, I'll tell you what, Chris, there'll be a lot of pensioners out there raising a glass of sherry to you this afternoon. You know, you really did go into bat for them. You know, you're an absolute diamond. And, yeah, let's get you on the show more often, mate. I think you've got a lot to offer. You've got a keen brain. Chris Middleton, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us today on GB News. Thank you. Now, rogue immigration advisors are charging up to 22 grand to help underqualified foreign nationals pose as skilled workers. It's another immigration scam. And that's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then. Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's 3:24 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News on this happy Monday afternoon. Now, an investigation from the Mail has uncovered a cash for visa scam exploiting the UK's skilled worker route. Rogue immigration advisor charging up to £22,000 a pop to help underqualified foreign nationals pose as skilled workers, securing visas through fake job adverts and forged paperwork. Now, one Leicester-based advisor admitted to tricking the Home Office and pocketing commissions while migrants work 60-hour weeks for less than £4 an hour. That is basically de facto slave labour. Now, critics warn the abuse of this visa route could be worse than the small boats crisis, which is quite the claim. Let's discuss this now with GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, we've seen so many of these immigration scams now. This is another bit of undercover reporting by the Daily Mail, this time a sting undercover in Leicester. Tell us what they discovered.
Yeah, well, basically, it is a scam. And what they were allegedly doing was that they were getting foreign workers in. They were underqualified, but the idea was they would get them a skilled visa for £22,000. Then they would end up in some kind of job, a menial job, but they were still had to come in on the £3,000 minimum that you need if you have a skilled visa. That's the salary you have to earn. They were getting that was then being creamed off, and they were then getting only about £900 a month out of that. So the whole thing was a scam all along. In fairness, what the Home Office have now done is that they've suspended the sponsorship licence for this particular firm, which is a start in the right direction. They will now investigate it themselves and see what happened. This should not happen. I mean, obviously, it is a scam. People move in where there's money to be made, and that's what's happened in this case.
I guess the point is, this is just one person who's been caught. And, you know, the notion here, this could be bigger than the small boats scam. You know, the small boats crisis, you know, the skilled worker abuse. So you've got somebody here basically subletting out a job to an underqualified, underskilled person. That makes them illegal. No, they don't fulfil the criteria.
Yeah, that's right.
But the lawyer is pretending they do. And then of the £3,000 a month they're taking from the salary, they're withholding £2,100 themselves per worker and only giving the worker £900. That's less than a third of the living wage, of the minimum wage. This is totally illegal, totally unacceptable. And I'm putting it to you, this could be the tip of the iceberg. They've caught this guy, but how many people like this are operating in Britain?
Well, that's what you have to find out. I mean, the Mail have found one person who's doing it. One hopes that the due process will now be followed, and if that person is guilty, they get their just desserts experts for doing what they did. The next stage, obviously, is the Home Office has got to say, hang on, could anybody else be doing this? All you have to do is examine all your licences, make sure that the people who are doing it are honest and are carrying them out properly. I mean, also bear in mind that when it comes to skilled visas, we have had a reduction of 40% on the skilled visas we're giving out. So fewer people are coming in on these visas.
There's another story we're going to be going into more depth later in the show, but let's just touch upon it now if we could, and that's this exclusive in the Sun newspaper today. This is the immigration bill of £4.7 billion per year to keep immigrants in hotels and look after them, takes the tax of 582,000 British workers. That's a population the size of Manchester. All of those people, all of their tax, simply going on freebies for asylum seekers. Once again, Nigel Nelson, underlying the utter inequality that millions of working Brits will feel that they're shoveling all their money into people who just live in the life of Riley.
Yeah, the question then is, what do? You are talking about 32,000 asylum seekers living at the moment in 210 hotels. What we have to do is try and find somewhere else which is cheaper. So at the moment that we are exploring the idea of doing...
Well, we can close the borders. We can stop the boats.
I don't quite get this idea about closing the borders. How do you physically stop those boats coming across and landing on the Kent beaches?
Well, there are many ways of doing that that have been put forward.
Only by drowning people.
But no, it doesn't have to do with drowning people. No one wants to drown people. Don't make them make the journey in the first place, because you won't get the freebies. There won't be a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And you could do that by containing offshore, deporting to somewhere like Rwanda or Albania or Kosovo, all the Ascension Islands. There are lots of ideas that could be explored. The fact of the matter is, we have a situation here where the pot of gold is such that you won't ever stop the people coming across the channel because the draw is so big.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to get rid of the draw. You're absolutely right. But there are other ways of doing that. The trouble is they're more long-term. You're looking at this you have to look at it as a global problem. You have to then rewrite the Refugee Convention. You then have to start looking again at the Human Rights Act.
We could leave them.
Just leaving them doesn't actually help terribly. I don't think that this country should become like Russia or Belarus and leave international law.
Yeah, but Russia and Belarus doesn't have a huge immigration problem into there because they have strong borders and they wouldn't stand for any of this nonsense. You can't compare. There's no equity between Belarus, Russia and the United Kingdom because we don't have the same problems.
No, I'm talking about leaving international law. Yeah. And do we want to be in that club rather than in the civilised club of people who actually maintain international law?
How is this civilised?
But what we should do is change international law. And the one way of actually stopping people coming across the channel is if there was a way of going somewhere else. At the moment, the only way of claiming... Well,
that's where they are.
All right, then come to a deal with France.
We tried that
to make sure that they stay there. But why should France be responsible for people who are only passing through their country to get to our country? We didn't want to take them back when they all went to Ireland.
I think it's a fair point. I do think it's a fair point. We shouldn't be blaming the French forever because it's our problem. We're paying the French a heck of a lot of money. It ain't working. We're not getting the return. We'll have this conversation in full later on with the author of this report, Jamie Jenkins. The figures are hair-curling. It's astonishing. The amount of money going down the plug hole, paid for by you lot, is simply off the scale. We'll have the full details later in the show. Nigel Nelson, another cracking debate. Now, we've got some statements to read out. Firstly, from the Immigration Advice Authority, who told GB News this. We recognise the seriousness of the issue and are working closely with the Home Office to determine the most appropriate course of action. And Dame Angela Eagle of the Labour Party says this. Since taking office, there have been 40% fewer visa applications. We have removed nearly 30,000 people with no rights to be here. And arrests from illegal working raids are up by 51%. We announced in the Immigration White Paper that backs British workers and ends the economy's addiction to cheap overseas labour. And we've also reached out to the Home Office for comment and we'll bring you that as and when they reply. There's still loads more to come between now and 4 o'clock, including NATO chief Mark Rutte has met with Sir Keir Starmer today and made calls for Britain to raise defence spending levels to an incredible 5%. And these are live pictures from inside that meeting and we'll cross there fully live for Mark Rutte. And I believe Sir Keir Starmer is to respond at that press conference. We'll be there shortly. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom, 32 minutes past 3. Well, the top story we've been covering today, more than 3/4 of pensioners will now receive the winter fuel payment as the government makes a major U-turn. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says 9 million pensioners in England and in Wales earning £35,000 or less will now get the support this winter. That's worth up to £300. It comes after over 10 million missed out last year when it was restricted to those on pension credit, a move widely criticised. Well, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch says the Prime Minister should apologise, while the Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey has welcomed the change. Funding for the £1.2 billion policy will be set out in the autumn budget. Nigel Farage has said that Port Talbot's blast furnaces should be fired up once again. On a visit to the Welsh town, the Reform UK leader called for the return of traditional steelmaking, describing it as a long-term goal for Wales. He's setting out his plan ahead of the 2026 Welsh Senedd elections, saying it's time to rebuild Britain's industrial backbone.
So I'm here today to say that our campaign for Senedd next May starts in earnest today. We've got a lot to do. We've got to raise money. We've got to find 96 calibre candidates to stand on those lists. And we've got to have a proper campaign plan. And I want to make it absolutely clear. Our aim is very simple. Our aim is to win. Our aim is to win a majority, and our aim as a party is to govern in Wales. And I believe that it is achievable.
Secondary school pupils will be taught artificial intelligence under a new plan to boost tech education. The Prime Minister says 1 million students will get access to AI learning tools through a £187 million Tech First scheme. It's part of a push to prepare young people for the tech jobs of the future and give them the tools to thrive in a digital world.
With the new Tech First training programme, that's up to 1 million young people trained in tech skills will be so crucial for their future. That's a £185 million investment embedding AI right through our education system, starting in our secondary schools with subjects like computer science.
The NHS says it urgently needs 1 million regular blood donors to avoid a national shortage. Just over 2% of the population currently sustains England's blood supply. With stocks so low, officials say a red alert could soon be triggered, risking public safety. The call follows a cyber attack last year that hit London hospitals and pushed services into crisis. There's a critical need, particularly for O-negative blood and more black donors to help treat patients with sickle cell. NHS chiefs say donating takes under an hour but saves lives for years. The government is also looking at plans to cap how long children can spend on social media, including a 2-hour daily limit per app and a possible 10 p.m. curfew. The Technology Secretary Peter Kyle says the addictive nature of some platforms is under review, but campaigners say action is too long overdue. Ian Russell, whose daughter Molly died after viewing harmful content, says only tougher laws will protect young lives. The Online Safety Act passed last year, but key parts are still to be enforced. And an update on the situation in Los Angeles, where protests over immigration raids appear to have calmed, at least for now, after the third night of unrest in the city. Officials are urging demonstrators to avoid violence and chaos, following scenes yesterday where vehicles were torched and a British photographer was shot by foam bullets and required surgery. President Trump has now deployed the National Guard, a move California's Governor Gavin Newsom says he will be challenging in court. You're up to date just after 3:30. I'll be back with a full roundup with the news at 4 o'clock. Now, though, it's over to Martin.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine at first today in the south, but it's mostly cloudy and it's increasingly damp, that rain persisting through the rest of the day across many northern parts of the country because of these weather fronts that are moving in at the moment. High pressure just to the south of the UK, keeping things dry for the time being, but really as we go into the evening, the rain in the north starts to spill south. It's on and off rain. There will be some heavy bursts for parts of northern England, North Wales, but through the hours of darkness it does turn light and patchy, drizzly see outbreaks of rain more than heavy bursts. And it stays dry to the southeast, drier to the north with showers following the main area of rain, but for most it's a cloudy and mild night. It's then a dull start to the day across much of England and Wales as these weak weather fronts sink south. We've got extensive low cloud across parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south. Outbreaks of light rain on and off through the morning. Brighter skies for northern England, much of Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some heavy showers for northern Scotland, but in between spells of sunshine and feeling a little fresher behind that area of cloud as it clears to the south. But it's going to feel fairly muggy in the south, I suspect, with the cloud persisting until early afternoon in places, and the drizzly rain will continue as well, but it will become increasingly restricted to the south of England after lunchtime. Brighter skies emerge then for the northern two-thirds of the UK, some fairly widespread sunshine, temperatures up to 18, 19 Celsius, certainly feeling more pleasant compared with today, but in the south it's a cloudier picture. Then as we go into Tuesday night, we're going to see a lot of clear skies at first, and that leads us on to a mostly fine Wednesday. It's going to start to feel warmer, and it's going to particularly feel humid on Thursday and Friday with the risk of thundery downpours.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Travellers on the A92 southbound between Bankhead and Red House roundabout should anticipate delays due to a broken down vehicle. Meanwhile, the M4 between junctions 41 Pentler, Baglan and 43 Landersea is closed for maintenance, with marked diversions guiding drivers. In Hampshire, on the M27 westbound entry slip at junction 7, a lane closure due to a broken down vehicle affects traffic. And on the trains, Heathrow Express and Avanti West Coast services are disrupted, leading to possible passenger delays. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. Time is 3:39. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the California Governor, Gavin Newsom, has announced that the state is suing the Donald Trump administration, claiming President Donald Trump had legally federalised the National Guard. Now, the clashes between protesters and law enforcement is exactly what Donald Trump wanted, Newsom wrote on his social media accounts this afternoon. Now, overnight, thousands of protesters took to the streets of Los Angeles. As you can see on your screens, incredible scenes of cars ablaze, rocks being hurled off of bridges, motorcycles swirling around, brandishing Mexican flags. And this is following President Trump's illegal migration crackdown. It's now the third day of demonstrations against that crackdown, with the National Guard deployed to try and restore order. And we can now speak with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, to tell us more. Mark White, in astonishing pictures. It looks completely anarchic, reminiscent of those riots back in Los Angeles in 1992. And now, incredibly, Gavin Newsom to sue the Trump administration.
Yeah, he'd threatened to do this before. He has now reconfirmed that he is going to take legal action against the US president because of what he says is illegal and immoral actions by Donald Trump in calling in the National Guard. And it's not just, of course, the National Guard. You've got the Defence Secretary, Pete Hegseth, on behalf of the president, also talking about calling in the Marine Corps as well. And it wouldn't be the first time that that's happened. You mentioned the LA riots. Well, in 1992, during those horrific LA riots, the Marine Corps was mobilised, some 1,500 Marine Corps personnel to assist the LAPD in trying to contain those riots. Now, we are not looking at a situation that is anywhere near as volatile or as violent as the riots we've had in LA in the past. But the difference on this occasion, Martin, is what we're seeing is a real battle, a head-to-head between the President, Donald Trump, and his vow to get his ICE officers, those immigration enforcement officers, actively arresting illegal immigrants and deporting them from the country. And then cities like LA, which of course are called sanctuary cities because they do not cooperate with ICE, with those immigration enforcement officers in the work that they carry out. And what the ICE agents have been telling the central government is they've been running into quite a lot of trouble in recent days when they've been trying to arrest suspected illegal immigrants because of these crowds turning up and violence erupting. And they've called on the LAPD and other law enforcement in the area to come to their assistance. And what they've claimed is that on some occasions it's taken up to 2 hours. Now, that is denied by the LAPD, who said it's taken 55 minutes. But even 55 minutes is an awful long time, Martin, for assistance to come to you when you may be facing a hostile crowd. And that is why Donald Trump and many believe that he has been ready for this moment, this showdown with these states that are deliberately, he would say, fighting back against his immigration policy by calling in now those members of the National Guard. 2,000 have now been mobilised in California to go to LA in the first instance. But it's not just LA. You're looking at images there, live images of the federal building in downtown LA, which is housing a number of prisoners, but also amongst that cohort are believed to be immigration offenders, those migrants, undocumented migrants who are being held with a view to then deporting them from the country. That's why it's become a flashpoint and why we're now seeing those members of the National Guard guarding this particular building. But I was just going to say, Martin, on the point of the potential for this to get even worse, we are told that in San Francisco overnight as well, there were significant riots, violent disorder. It led to 60 arrests and, of course, condemnation of the violence. But San Francisco is another sanctuary city, another city where law enforcement don't routinely cooperate with those immigration enforcement officers.
And Mark, why isn't it funny how when Joe Biden was the president, these riots would have been called mostly peaceful? They were mostly peaceful riots, but here we're seeing, ICE headquarters being bombarded with rocks, vehicles set on fire, clearly attempted murder cases, rocks being hurled from motorway flyover bridges into the windshields of police officers, other things being thrown off, scooters being thrown off, clearly great risk of life to the authorities. And Mark White, a lot of people will be looking at this thinking, hang on a minute, the president was elected on a mandate of doing illegal raids to get immigrants out of the country who had no right to be there. Why is the governor of California seemingly taking the side of illegal immigrants?
Well, you're right, Martin. Donald Trump made no secret. In fact, just the opposite. It was a central plank of his electoral campaign, was his stated ambition to clamp down on illegal immigrants in the country, to get them removed, particularly those violent gang members. But what you've got effectively is a showdown from the left and from Donald Trump's government. Donald Trump's government determined to ensure that those undocumented migrants in the country are removed as a matter of urgency. And then Gavin Newsom and many on the left who have declared their cities and states, often sanctuary cities, sanctuary counties, even some sanctuary states, where the stated aim that they have is not to cooperate with this central government immigration policy. And that's led to this showdown. And I think it's only probably going to intensify in the days ahead.
It's an incredible state of affairs, and it's certainly one to watch. Now, Mark, another story today we're covering, of course, the NATO chief, Mark Rutte, has met with Keir Starmer today amid calls for Britain to raise defence spending levels to 5% of economic output. In fact, let's cross now live and hear the NATO chief speak.
He's going to make some short opening remarks. I'm then going to ask some questions. Get your questions ready, as we will have good time for that. Is someone putting up their hand already? Thank you. Maybe not quite that ready. I will try and get in as many as I can. And just in case you're in any doubt, it is being live streamed and is on the record.
Very good.
Secretary General, very warm welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the introduction, Bronwyn. And it is a pleasure to be at Chatham House, which is still one of the world's leading think tanks on international affairs. So it's a real honor to be here. It has been producing influential ideas for more than a century. And this is a place where I want to share the plan to build a better NATO. This plan will be at the heart of our summit in The Hague. I want to thank the United Kingdom for more than 7 decades of continuous commitment to NATO. It makes vital contributions to our shared security. The British Army leads NATO's multinational force in Estonia. RAF jets are patrolling over Poland's skies as part of NATO's air policing mission. NATO's Maritime Command in Northwood directs our naval operations, and Royal Navy ships protect the seas. With a NATO-first policy at its core, I also warmly welcome the UK's new Strategic Defence Review. It will strengthen and modernise Britain's armed forces and enhance NATO's collective defence. Commitment has a cost, and I welcome that the UK government will spend significantly more on defence in the future. I know we can count on the United Kingdom as we start the next chapter for NATO. In just 2 weeks, I will chair the NATO summit of allied leaders in The Hague. And this summit will transform our alliance. We will build a better NATO, one that is stronger, fairer and more lethal, so that we can continue to keep our people safe and our adversaries at bay. Because of Russia, war has returned to Europe. We also face the threat of terrorism and fierce global competition. Russia has teamed up with China, North Korea and Iran. They are expanding their militaries and their capabilities. Putin's war machine is speeding up, not slowing down. Russia is reconstituting its forces with Chinese technology and producing more weapons faster than we thought. In terms of ammunition, Russia produces in 3 months what the whole of NATO produces in a year. And its defence industrial base is expected to roll out 1,500 tanks, 3,000 armoured vehicles and 200 Iskander missiles this year alone. Russia could be ready to use military force against NATO within 5 years. 5 years. Let's not kid ourselves. We are all on the eastern flank now. The new generation of Russian missiles travel at many times the speed of sound. The distance between European capitals is only a matter of minutes. There is no longer East or West. There is just NATO. China is also modernizing and expanding its military at breakneck speed. It already has the world's largest navy, and its battle force is expected to grow to 435 ships by 2030. China is also building up its nuclear arsenal, and it aims to have more than 1,000 operational nuclear warheads also by 2030. Those who stand against freedom and democracy are digging in, preparing for long-term confrontation, and trying to dominate and divide us. In 1936, Winston Churchill posed this question during a debate in the House of Commons. Will there be time to put our defences in order? Will there be time to make these necessary efforts? Or will the awful words, "too late," be recorded? And that is the question for NATO now. History has taught us that to preserve peace, we must prepare for war. Wishful thinking will not keep us safe. We cannot dream away the danger. Hope is not a strategy. So NATO has to become a stronger, fairer and more lethal alliance. A stronger NATO means spending much more on our defence. All allies will reach the initial target of spending 2% of GDP on defence this year. That was a pledge made way back in 2014. Now we have a concrete plan for the future. We know what we need, and we know what to do. At the summit in The Hague, I expect allied leaders will agree to spend 5% of GDP on defence. It will be a NATO-wide commitment and a defining moment for the alliance. There are two parts to this new defence spending plan. 3.5% will be invested in our core military requirements, while the rest will go towards defence and security-related investments, including infrastructure and building industrial capacity. 5% is not some figure plucked from the air. It's grounded in hard facts. The fact is, we need a quantum leap in our collective defence. The fact is, we must have more forces and capabilities to implement our defence plans in full. The fact is, danger will not disappear, even when the war in Ukraine ends. Our decisions on defence spending are driven by NATO's battle plans and capability targets. They define what forces and capabilities allies need to provide. And last week, NATO defence ministers agreed ambitious new targets. The exact details are classified, but we need a 400% increase in air and missile defence. We see in Ukraine how Russia delivers terror from above. So we will strengthen the shield that protects our skies. Our militaries also need thousands more armoured vehicles and tanks, millions more artillery shells. And we must double our enabling capabilities, such as logistics, supply, transportation and medical support. Allies will invest in more warships and aircraft. To give just one example, America's allies will procure at least 700 F-35 fighter jets in total. We will also invest in more drones and long-range missile systems, and invest more in space and cyber capabilities. It is clear, if we do not invest more, our collective defence is not credible. Spending more is not about pleasing an audience of one. It is about protecting 1 billion people. Allies will also make broader defence and security-related investments, including infrastructure. Roads, rail and ports are just as important as tanks, fighters and warships. We need civilian transport networks that can support military mobility, to get the right forces to the right place at the right time. The home front and the front line are now one and the same. War is no longer fought at a distance. Our societies and militaries are in this together. We will invest more in civil preparedness, so our societies are ready for the day we pray will never come. And NATO works 24/7 to ensure that day never arrives. We will also spend more to protect our societies against cyber attacks, sabotage and other threats. And broader defence and security-related investments should include financing and capital improvements to our defence industrial base. It is clear that right across the alliance we are not producing enough. So as we increase defence investment, we need to increase defence production. More demand means increasing supply, not higher prices. And it also means ensuring that the alliance can produce at scale and at speed. We need raw industrial capacity, like Sheffield Forgemasters, which I visited this morning with Defence Secretary John Healey. We need cheaper electricity, access to critical minerals, and more engineering know-how. Otherwise, the commitment to spend 5% of GDP on defence will be lost to production costs rather than invested in defence. So we will enhance and expand the industrial base right across the alliance. We will support increased defence production, remove barriers to cooperation and harness cutting-edge technologies. To borrow from the former Labour Prime Minister Harold Wilson, I want NATO to forge its future in the white heat of innovation. To stay ahead of our adversaries, we must develop and adopt new technologies. They can be cost-effective and deliver the same effect as traditional military heavy metal. On the battlefields of Ukraine, $400 drones used the right way are taking out $2 million Russian tanks. More defense spending and production provides effective deterrence, promotes economic growth and creates jobs. The summit in The Hague will send a clear demand signal to industry. And industry must meet our ambition. So, we will make NATO stronger by spending and producing more. And we will make NATO fairer by rebalancing the burden of our security, with every ally contributing their fair share. We all benefit from the protection our transatlantic alliance provides. And it is vital that every member of NATO pulls their weight, because America has carried too much of the burden for too long. America's allies have broad shoulders, and Europe and Canada will do more for our shared security. And that will be backed by America's rock-solid commitment to NATO. As well as becoming stronger and fairer, NATO will become more lethal. Rest assured, we will always be a defensive alliance. Becoming more lethal means strengthening our deterrence and defense posture, providing our militaries with what they need to keep us safe, and showing any aggressor we can and will hit back harder. With our military power and our resolve to use it if necessary, no one should even think about attacking us. President Putin does not act like someone who is interested in peace. Russia continues to strike civilian targets in Ukraine, day after day, night after night. This is violence for the sake of violence. We fully support President Trump.
That was the NATO defence chief there, Mark Rutte, saying commitment has a cost. And I know I can count on the UK. This 5% isn't just a made-up figure. We need a quantum leap. That could be very expensive. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News.
Ukraine defends itself today.
Beautiful stuff. Good afternoon on this happy Monday. It's 4 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK.
This winter, 9 million pensioners will now receive the winter fuel payments.
After a massive backlash and a battering at the local elections, today the Chancellor Rachel Reeves did a huge U-turn on the winter fuel allowance. 9 million OAPs will now get the payment. But will pensioners forgive Labour and forget, or is the damage done?
I believe we can make Wales much, much better than it's been after 26 years of continuous and failing Labour rule.
Today, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage promised to put Welsh people first by reopening the Port Talbot steel plant and also coal mines, and making sure that locals get housing before asylum seekers. I'll be joined in the studio by Reform UK's Lee Anderson to ask him, can Reform really make Wales great again? And shocking new figures seen by GB News reveal Britain's £4.7 billion annual bill to keep immigrants in hotels takes every penny of tax from an incredible 582,000 British taxpayers. And that's a city the size of Manchester. And the report's author will tell me today this is simply not sustainable. And Israeli authorities have intercepted Greta Thunberg's Freedom Flotilla, which they called the selfie yacht, saying, Greta, the party's over. Well, Greta and co will now be ordered to watch videos of the October the 7th Hamas atrocities. Should we just let them into Gaza and left them to it? And also on today's show,
have released factual statistics showing that 1 in 4 sex crimes is committed by foreign nationals here in the UK, and considering they only make up 6% of the population, this is incredibly disproportionate.
Yeah, and a new campaign group claims that immigrants are responsible for a quarter of all sex crimes, despite only making up 6% of the population. And I'll be joined by a brave young member of the Women's Safety Initiative who'll tell me this. We're protecting women where Parliament has failed. And that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, the show is a pleasure to have your company. Also got a bonus sensational exclusive because the families of those killed by Valdo Calacane have today been in London for a meeting with the Health Minister, Wes Streeting. I'm about to be joined by 2 of the fathers in the studio, Dave Webber and Dr. Sanjoy Kumar. They'll join me ahead of this Friday. There is a peaceful march in Nottingham where the families are encouraging people to show up and support them as they visit for the first time on the 2nd anniversary of their beautiful children's death. This Friday, for the first time, they're visiting the site of those killings. I'll be there with the families and they'll be with me in the studio very shortly. Get in touch usual way, gbnews.com/your say. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just after 4 o'clock, the top story, well, more than 3/4 of pensioners will now receive the winter fuel payment as the government has made a major U-turn. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says 9 million pensioners in England and Wales earning £35,000 or less will get the support this winter, worth up to £300. It comes after over 10 million pensioners missed out last year when it was restricted to those on pension credit, a move widely criticised. The Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, says the Prime Minister should apologise, while the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, has welcomed the change. Funding for the £1.2 billion policy will be set out in the autumn budget. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage says the Port Talbot blast furnaces should be fired up once again. On a visit to the Welsh town, he called for the return of traditional steelmaking, describing it as a long-term goal for Wales. He's setting out his plan ahead of the 2026 Welsh elections, saying it's time to rebuild Britain's industrial backbone.
So I'm here today to say that our campaign for Senedd next May starts in earnest today. We've got a lot to do. We've got to raise money. We've got to find 96 calibre candidates to stand on those lists. And we've got to have a proper campaign plan. And I want to make it absolutely clear. Our aim is very simple. Our aim is to win. Our aim is to win a majority, and our aim as a party is to govern in Wales. And I believe that it is achievable.
Secondary school pupils will be taught artificial intelligence under a new plan to boost tech education. The Prime Minister says 1 million students will get access to AI learning tools through a £187 million scheme. It's all part of a push to prepare young people for the tech jobs of the future and give them the tools to thrive in a digital world.
With the new Tech First training programme, that's up to 1 million young people trained in tech skills that will be so crucial for their future. That's a £185 million investment, embedding AI right through our education system, starting in our secondary schools with subjects like computer science.
The NHS says it urgently needs 1 million regular blood donors to avoid a national shortage. Just 2% of the population currently sustains England's entire blood supply. With stocks now so low, officials say a red alert could soon be triggered, risking public safety. The call follows a cyber attack last year that hit London hospitals and pushed services into crisis. There's a critical need for O-negative blood and more black donors to help treat patients with sickle cell. NHS chiefs say donating takes under an hour but saves lives for years. And the government is looking at plans to cap how long children can spend on social media, including a 2-hour daily limit per app and a 10 p.m. curfew. The Technology Secretary says the addictive nature of some platforms is now under review, but campaigners say action is too long overdue. Ian Russell, whose daughter Molly sadly died after viewing harmful content, says only tougher laws will protect young lives. The Online Safety Act passed last year, but key parts are still to be enforced. And protests over immigration raids in Los Angeles appear at this stage to have calmed after a third night of unrest. Officials are now urging demonstrators to avoid further violence and chaos, following scenes on Sunday where vehicles were torched and a British photographer was shot and required surgery. It's after President Trump deployed the National Guard, a move the California Governor Gavin Newsom has said he will now be challenging in court. Those are the latest headlines just after 4 o'clock. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Martin.
Thank you, Sam. Now, this Friday marks 2 years on since the tragic attack on 2 students and 1 care worker by Valdo Calacane, and the Nottingham victims are going to the site of those murders to mark the 2nd anniversary. I'm delighted to say now I'm joined by the father of Barnaby Webber, David Webber, and the father of Grace O'Malley Kumar, Dr. Sanjoy Kumar, in the studio today. Gentlemen, it's always a pleasure to see you. It's an absolute delight. And you're surprised, you just texted me out of the blue because you've been in London today. Yep. You've had a meeting with Wes Streeting, the health minister. You have some reports there, Dr. Sanjay, that you have shown him. Are you able to fill us in on what happened in that meeting today? And are you hopeful that you'll get the resolution? Because you're pushing for accountability, for justice, and for no more of this, we must learn lessons and light candles. You want action. Do you think Wes Streeting is going to help you out?
Martin, thank you for having us on. 3 reports I brought to your newsroom beforehand. One was from the CQC, the other one was from the Trust, and this is from NHS England. No names, no details. I'd like to ask anyone who has suffered the tragedies as we have, how could that possibly be acceptable? Anyone who has suffered in our country from mental health-related homicide wants details. They want to know who put someone dangerous out on the street. It's quite obvious. The only way you stop people putting dangerous people out on the street is if you name them and you ask for responsibility as to why didn't you do the right risk assessments, why didn't you give the right treatment. This monster was sectioned 4 times. 4 times they didn't change the treatment. 4 times they didn't give him intramuscular medication. 4 times they put this 30-year-old man out with 17, 18-year-old students, amongst schoolgoers in Nottingham, amongst the children. They even identified that he was too dangerous for mental health workers to see him alone. But I'll tell you what, he was fine and safe enough to be alone with other students, vulnerable people. The mental health care workers were totally irresponsible. Even they knew they should see him in 2s. But I tell you what, put him out in the community where he can cause carnage, because I tell you what, that's safe. There are no names of people here who are responsible. So today we sat down with Wes Streeting and we said, this is the problem. We need these people to be accounted for. And so the Secretary of State for Health is sitting with this conundrum because it is a difficult thing to do. We understand that as families, but we want accountability. And we have made the argument today with him, if you don't have accountability, you will not get change. Because like I said the last time I was on your programme, we want to be the last case of mental health-related homicide in our country. For all of those parents, relatives who've been through the pain we have, we want to stop this. And the only way to stop this is name people who are responsible. That is our argument. It will not change.
David, this isn't about, a witch hunt. This is just about justice and accountability. And you were saying in the break, you work in business. If this happened in the private sector, people would be named, they'd be shamed and actions would be taken. Why should that not happen when it's the public sector?
Absolutely, Martin. I mean, I think we were just talking to Lee, actually, a minute ago, and he came up with an analogy that I thought was perfect. He's a chef. If he gave everyone food poisoning in his restaurant, he'd be named and shamed. He would be in all kinds of trouble. Whereas in this case, it seems that we're into protecting people that aren't doing things properly. And I don't see the sense in that, because we've heard lots of people say, well, yeah, but no one will go into psychiatry, no one will do this. I'm sorry, if that's the case, then they shouldn't be in psychiatry. Yeah. Because, no one would go into any job if they didn't have a passion for it. And if you've got a passion for psychiatry and you do your job properly, I mean, I read Sandro summarised. I mean, I'm not very good with these sort of reports because they're so detailed, and I'm not massively a detailed person, if I'm honest. But I read, Sandro detailed it down into a very, easy to read chronology of everything that happened for his 4 sectionings. And it's just a car crash. And I'm reading it and thinking, I can see that. I'm not medical. I'm not trained in any way. But I'm looking at this from a common sense point of view, thinking, this isn't right. My son would still be alive today if people had done their jobs properly, and they'd actually controlled this person properly. They did not. They let him out. They put a ticking time, and then they discharged him, even after all. I mean, when you read it, it actually it does make you cry, because I did cry when I read it, because you just realise just how ineffective these people are. They've got to. I'm not saying that about every psychiatrist in the country. That would be crazy, because there are some brilliant ones out there. But clearly, this has been a massive failing, and people need to be held to account for it. And they need to understand that if you make mistakes, it's fine to make mistakes, but not multiple times. And not. One of the psychiatrists, one of them said that he could kill. And that was early on in his. And you're thinking, well, if they've said that at that point, the juncture, which was like in 2020, was it?
Yeah. And months before, there were multiple stabbings in Nottinghamshire. And those occasions as well were pointed out to the Secretary of State to say, what changes did the senior management team make at the Trust to make people safe in Nottingham? So we've left all of that with the Health Secretary. He's got a lot to think about. Yeah. He has promised that he's going to give us answers. And, from the meeting today, we find that he is passionate. He's taking a personal interest in our case. And he's going to come up with some, I think, tough answers for us.
Yeah. OK, you live in hope that may get your resolution. This Friday, of course, is the second anniversary of the atrocity. It must be incredibly tough for that moment, but you decided to try and do something positive about it on Friday, something productive. You're holding a gathering, which I now believe is turning into more of a peaceful march, a coming together of the community in Nottingham. I'm delighted to accept your invite. I'd love to come. I want to walk with you. It's my city. Still brings me a great sense of sorrow and shame. What happened to your kids? God, it's not even about me, sorry. Tell us about Friday. How can people get involved?
Well, Martin, we will walk down the streets in Nottingham where our children loved being at university. They loved the people of Nottingham. They loved all of the night spots, the pubs, the social life. They loved the city. They loved the people of the city. And we want to be in solidarity with the city and say that, every young person in Nottingham should be safe. There are 50,000 students who come into Nottingham every year. They bring to the economy, they bring to the culture, they add to the sports, the heritage, everything positive. Beautiful university town. We just want to march in peace, show our solidarity with people in Nottingham. We want to lay a rose where, as I said to you before, that my rose, my daughter, fell. She fell with her friend Barney. And I'll tell you what, all of that area is a student area. The police, the local government, the councils, they should all be protecting those lovely young kids, the schoolgoers. If you take all of those, and I've searched this, if you take all of those young people into account, there are like 60,000, 70,000 young people who commute daily in Nottingham. They should be safe. It's a beautiful city. They should be kept safe. People failed in their responsibility. And whilst we'll be full of sorrow in the back, there is also, a little bit of why wasn't more done to keep them safe. But on Friday, we will gather at St Paul's Church, and then we will walk down right next to Ickleston Road, and we will lay a flower where our loved ones fell.
And then we'll walk to, then we're going to walk with the Coates boys to where Ian fell, because we haven't been there yet, and I think it's right for us to go there with them and show our support with them.
And that's the street behind where I grew up. Really, it's just so much to get your head around. So what time does that happen, and how can people? So St Paul's Church, and
so we're going to gather there for a moment's reflection at 11:30, and then we are going to walk down at midday, and very simply lay a rose.
I'd like to keep talking with you guys for a moment longer if I could. We're going to go through the break because it's so important. When you sit down with somebody like Wes Streeting, you're this close, and do you get a feeling in his eyes, in his soul, that he's a good man and he wants to help?
Yes.
You've got faith in him?
Yes. I personally, Wes, I think he's very good, and I think he actually does listen. He wants to do the right thing, and I think that's the most important thing. I don't think he's hiding. I don't think he wants to sugarcoat anything. He knows he's got a massive problem, not just with mental health issues, that he's having to deal with, but a whole raft of other problems with the NHS and beyond. So he is, but I believe he really does want to do the right thing. And we both got the sense.
Martin, the first week of office, he wrote a letter to all the trusts saying that just because patients don't actually engage, you are not to discharge. He did that in his first week of office. We met him whilst he was in shadow, and I think he's very positively engaged. It's a tough ask. We're not silly. We know it's a tough ask. We're asking to name. But the argument we made with him today is that if you had 4 heart attacks, it'd be quite unusual, right? That cardiologist, you'd kind of think, what kind of cardiologist is this guy? You had 4 heart attacks. If you had 4 hip replacements, you'd be kind of saying, what kind of orthopaedic surgeon is this guy? Got 4 hip replacements. But you can be sectioned 4 times, have no change of treatment, and the doctor doesn't get a mention. I think that's kind of wrong. In any other specialty in medicine, you get names. So today what we said to Wes Streeting was, how can there be a double standard with just this branch of medicine? And if there is a threat, then people wouldn't do psychiatry. The more risky jobs like cardiac surgery and brain surgery wouldn't have doctors. You've got doctors doing them earning a damn good salary. I tell you what, it's utter nonsense to say that no one do psychiatry. I tell you what, it's probably more sensible to say people would do psychiatry better.
Yeah.
And that's really what we were after today.
David, the second anniversary, well, both of your second anniversary is going to be very, very tough. But is it a moment, do you think? Because some of the stuff that really, gets people choked is things like Barnaby's room. You walk past the room.
Yeah.
And it's like, will it be a moment where you think you might be able to sort of finally try and, how do you ever move on?
I truly don't believe you do, and I think you learn to cope. I think that's probably the most correct thing to say. Is you can't move on from it. I mean, how would you move on from having your son and daughter killed, and even with your father being killed? I mean, how do you move on from that? It's impossible. I've just literally come down from Nottingham today because yesterday the cricket boys put on a cup for Barney, and it was lovely. But I find it so hard. I found as soon as I went into Nottingham, I find it so upsetting because I'm driving, and actually I was driving along and I drove past the Sainsbury's. I remember to myself when I dropped Barney off once, I took him there and he pretty much fleeced me for every penny I had for stuff he wanted, and seemed to want an awful lot of stuff. Got a lot of booze in there, I think, at the time. And you're thinking, well, it's so upsetting. But I don't think you do move on. I think this is the bottom line. I think you have to learn to cope.
OK, gentlemen, thanks for coming in, Sears. It really does mean a lot. Thank you. And I'll see you Friday.
We'll see you Friday.
Thank you very, very much, and keep fighting. Thank you.
Thank you for supporting us.
Wonderful. Now, if you want to keep up to date with all the latest on the NATO chief speaking on defence, then you can scan the QR code on your screens now to do that. Coming next, leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, has said his party will be the only real competitor to Labour in the Welsh elections next May, and I'll be joined by a head honcho in Reform Wales next. With me, Martin Daubney on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here. I'm Michelle Duke,
Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 4:24. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, has said that his party will be the only real competitor to Labour in the Welsh elections next May. Now, Reform has pledged to defy the government to reopen the coal mines in Wales and also Port Talbot, the steel plant there, if the party wins power next year. Now, Mr Farage also took a fiery swipe at Labour, saying they're in blind panic, and took credit for the government's winter fuel payment U-turn announcement earlier on today. Now, to react to that speech, I'm now joined by the Reform UK councillor, David Thomas, who's something of a head honcho in Reform Wales. Councillor Thomas, pleasure to have your company. So, put Welsh people first was Nigel Farage's pledge. Tell us about his mission.
Well, what a breath of fresh air, Martin, to have a leader that stands before the people of Wales, telling them the ideas that Reform UK, the ambition of Reform UK with reindustrialising our nation again. And I think this is something so important and something that people of Wales have been longing to hear for such a long time.
Now, of course, Councillor Thomas, there was quite a bit of pushback from journalists in the room, as you'd expect, saying, how can you open blast furnaces that have been decommissioned? It might be impossible. It could be, at best, very expensive. Opening the coal mines, no doubt, will resonate emotionally with the communities. But is Reform UK making big promises, cheques it can't cash?
Well, again, I mean, let's look at exactly what Nigel said. I mean, these are the party's ambitions. And let's be honest, like you said, that this will resonate with many communities in Wales. And we're not mind harking back to the days of sending young men underground with pickaxes. I mean, technology has moved on, so has health and safety, and it makes more sense for the environment to stop importing coal and start mining what we use. It's a massive store. We have a massive store of economical potential underneath our feet. It'll be well-paid jobs, local jobs, and it'll bring real pride back to our community, all our communities, and a sense of belonging and a sense of contributing to local success here in Wales.
Now, David Thomas, another policy that leapt out the page when I listened in was the idea of Welsh people first on housing lists and defunding the Wales Refugee Council and ending the nation of sanctuary for asylum seekers, which ostensibly means Wales will pull up the drawbridge to taking asylum seekers shoved around the country from Westminster. Do you expect some criticism on that thing, on that policy, or has that gone down well with people on the doorstep?
Gone down massively well, Martin. I mean, at the end of the day, nation of sanctuary sounds lovely, but when you dig into it, it's costing the Welsh taxpayer 55 million a year so far for this to happen. And Nigel's correct. I mean, the people of Wales, our communities, are put at the back of the queue when these migrants that are coming in are taking the first-handed gifts of what Wales has to offer. Is that fair? I don't think it is.
Now, we heard the First Minister today, earlier on GBNews, saying Nigel Farage doesn't care about Wales. He's an outsider. He's coming into Wales to stoke up division.
I mean, just look at that for what it is. Of course, the First Minister is going to say that, because Nigel Farage is speaking to the people of Wales, give them exactly what they're asking for: new jobs, better skilled jobs, on about opening up new colleges for technical colleges to teach our young, welding, plumbing, robotics, electric trades. What more does the people want? What is the First Minister offering? What has Welsh Labour done for Wales in the past 26 years? The bottom line is, she can say what she wants, Welsh Labour can say what they want, but at the end of the day, they have failed the people of Wales, they have failed our communities, and this is why Reform UK is surging in the polls and on the doorstep every single time we're out with boots on the ground.
Well, it certainly looks at the moment that Reform UK is surging in the polls, and Plaid Cymru could do well as well. At the expense, of course, of the big top parties, the Conservatives could be pushed into near extinction. We have to leave it there. Councillor David Thomas, we've simply ran out of time. But thanks for joining us. You, of course, were at that launch in Wales earlier on today. Let's go back to the studio for some reaction now with GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, what do you make of the launch earlier on? I guess when you're in opposition, it's easy to say things which attract the headlines, but the proof will be in the pudding. And more to the point, can Wales afford it?
Well, I mean, also, can reform deliver it? If you just take the last point there about immigration, bear in mind immigration is a reserve power of central government, so there's a limit to what you can do on the ground to control it. Now, what Nigel Farage is suggesting, I'm sure it's terribly popular. Whether that can be delivered is a bit of a moot point.
I think it could. For example, the Welsh government is in charge of funding things like the Wales Refugee Council,
which they could deal with, yes.
Whose remit it is to say, yes, we can get more in. And also it has the power to end the sanctuary city, nation of sanctuary city scheme. So it could effectively say no more asylum seekers.
Anything that's done by local government, then obviously you'd have power over doing it. But the overall immigration policy is another matter. So, for instance, if the transfer of unaccompanied children around the country, whether he would be able to put a stop to that is another matter.
Yeah, but what about this notion? And again, it is very, very popular, not populist, popular, to say Nigel Farage today said we would ensure on social housing lists that Welsh people born in the nation, would come first. That does go down well with the electorate.
It does, but you have to examine that one. I mean, the whole point about social housing, who it should go to is whoever is most in need.
Yeah, but how is that?
That doesn't mean asylum seekers. That means that can mean local people, obviously, but it is a matter of need that you must actually use as your criteria first of all.
But asylum seekers are granted the most special need under the current system. That's the point. Well, so if a nation said, well, no more asylum seekers are coming in that way into Wales, you would have a solution to a problem, which is quite tangible.
And we're back to a reserve power again. I'm not sure you'd ever be able to actually do that. But you've got to put them somewhere, and that is always the problem. Do you want them in hotels, which are hugely expensive, as we've talked about before? If there is spare social housing, do you want to house them there? Well, it depends where you are. I mean, I don't know what the situation is in Wales, but I've seen social housing that couldn't be used for any other purpose but to house asylum seekers. So if that is the case, that's what you use it for.
OK, Nigel Nelson, always a pleasure to get your thoughts. Thank you very, very much. Now, in the last few moments, the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has given her thoughts on Labour's U-turn on the winter fuel allowance.
Well, we've been campaigning for them to reverse the winter fuel allowance, so I'm glad that the government has finally done this. But what took them so long? I asked Keir Starmer 6 times at the dispatch box, at PMQs, why was he doing this? He needed to reverse it. Labour MPs voted again and again and again when we were telling them that it was the wrong thing to do. And now here we are with a U-turn. Let's see exactly where we land with the announcement that they've made today. The point is that this is complete chaos. Why did Labour do this? It was because they wanted to give a bung to their friends in the unions, so they took money away from pensioners and gave it to train drivers. We would never have done this in the first place. So this is a mess of their own making.
That's Kemi Badenoch moments ago reacting to Labour's winter fuel tax U-turn. Now, lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including Britain's migrants' accommodation bill has hit an astonishing £4.7 billion a year. And that's the equivalent of every penny of income tax and national insurance paid by 582,000 workers. Astonishing data. That's next. But first, here's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom. The top story just after 4:30. More than 3/4 of pensioners will now receive the winter fuel payment. As let me just make sure that you can definitely hear me this afternoon. Apologies for the audio issues there. Chancellor Rachel Reeves has confirmed that 9 million pensioners in England and Wales earning £35,000 or less will get support this winter, worth up to £300. It comes after over 10 million missed out last year when it was restricted to those on pension credit, a move widely criticised. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch says the Prime Minister should apologise, while Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey has welcomed the change. Funding for the £1.2 billion policy will set out the autumn budget. The NHS says it urgently needs 1 million regular blood donors to avoid a national shortage. Just 2% of the population currently sustain England's blood supply. With stocks so low, officials say a red alert could soon be triggered, risking public safety. The government is looking at plans to cap how long children can spend on social media, including a 2-hour daily limit per app and a 10 p.m. curfew. The Technology Secretary, Peter Kyle, says the addictive nature of some platforms is under review, but campaigners say action is long overdue. Ian Russell, whose daughter Molly died after viewing harmful content, says only tougher laws will protect young lives. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Next, though, let's take a look at the finance markets.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Well, here's how the markets are looking for you this hour. The pound will buy you $1.3540 and €1.1875. The price of gold is £2,450 and 88 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,813 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine at first today in the south, but mostly cloudy, and it's increasingly damp, that rain persisting through the rest of the day across many northern parts of the country because of these weather fronts that are moving in at the moment. High pressure just to the south of the UK, keeping things dry for the time being, but really as we go into the evening, the rain in the north starts to spill south. It's on and off rain. There will be some heavy bursts for parts of northern England, North Wales, but through the hours of darkness it does turn light and patchy, drizzly outbreaks of rain more than heavy bursts. And it stays dry to the southeast, drier to the north with showers following the main area of rain, but for most it's a cloudy and mild night. It's then a dull start to the day across much of England and Wales as these weak weather fronts sink south. We've got extensive low cloud across parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south. Outbreaks of light rain on and off through the morning. Brighter skies for northern England, much of Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some heavy showers for northern Scotland, but in between spells of sunshine and feeling a little fresher behind that area of cloud as it clears to the south. But it's going to feel fairly muggy in the south, I suspect, with the cloud persisting until early afternoon in places, and the drizzly rain will continue as well, but it will become increasingly restricted to the south of England after lunchtime. Brighter skies emerge then for the northern two-thirds of the UK, some fairly widespread sunshine, temperatures up to 18, 19 Celsius, certainly feeling more pleasant compared with today, but in the south it's a cloudier picture. Then as we go into Tuesday night, we're going to see a lot of clear skies at first, and that leads us on to a mostly fine Wednesday. It's going to start to feel warmer, and it's going to particularly feel humid on Thursday and Friday with the risk of thundery downpours.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the A1 southbound at Oak Tree Junction, traffic is restricted due to a broken down vehicle. The M4 westbound is closed for maintenance between junctions 41 and 43, with diversions. In Somerset, an accident on the M5 southbound exit slip at junction 23 has all lanes closed. Normal conditions are not expected until later this evening. In Surrey, the M25 anti-clockwise at junction 10 is experiencing a 15-minute delay due to a broken down vehicle. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast services face disruptions. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. It's 4:38 now. Then Britain's migrant accommodation bill has hit an incredible £4.7 billion a year. Now that's the equivalent of every penny of income tax and national insurance paid by 583,000 workers. That's a population the size of Manchester. It makes your hair curl. I'm joined now by the statistician who made these findings, and that is Jamie Jenkins. Jamie, welcome to the show. These figures are simply incredible. Tell us about your findings.
Yeah, good afternoon, Martin. So obviously we hear daily, the number of people coming over on small boats, and the bill for all of this, when you add in the small boat people and you add in people who are coming here legally and then claim asylum, it comes to £4.7 billion. Now, what you can do is look at the tax take that we get from different workers. So the average UK salary is around £38,000 a year, which when you look at the income tax and the national insurance contributions, that's around £8,000 a year. So you're right to call up. What I've found there is that it's close to 600,000 people have to get up, go to work every single day just to pay the bills of the asylum accommodation. And remember, many of these 600,000 people are struggling to pay their own bills. So it just goes to show the unfairness in the system when you've got to go to work and you've got this massive bill. But the government said they were going to try and curb and get under control. But figures released last week, Martin, shows that the Home Office is planning to spend a similar amount next year on hotel accommodation as what they did last year. So that promise of Labour to kind of get rid of the hotels, it's not coming to fruition.
And it's so useful to put it in terms of the size of cities, because we heard, immigration is down to 400,000 a couple of weeks ago. That's still a city the size of Bristol every year. And your figures here are significantly larger than the population of Nottingham, Sheffield and Leeds. These are people, as you say, go to work every single day. And another incredible finding here, Jamie Jenkins, the total is higher than the tax contributions of every UK mechanic and HGV driver combined.
No, indeed. And I think something that's not really highlighted as well when you look at these figures is, where does this bill come from? So we talk a lot about the small boats and people crossing there, but they only make up around a third of people who are claiming asylum. What's interesting, actually, is around 2/3 of people are coming here legally, and the most common country people claim asylum from is Pakistan. Now, the last time I looked, is Pakistan, there's kind of no war there. why are people trying to claim asylum now when they've come basically into the country legally? It's probably because the incentives to kind of claim asylum and get all of this free stuff that we're talking about is there, and they don't want to go back. And people freely go back and forth Pakistan on a daily basis. You know, there's clearly no rationale for that, Martin. So just remember this 4.7 billion bill as well. It doesn't include legal costs. We've heard some other figures today. It's about £1 million a week. Doesn't include healthcare. Doesn't include the education of, say, dependents. Doesn't include kind of cash support as well. So the bill is much higher. And ultimately, you know, as we're going in towards the next election over the next few years, Labour said they're going to get us under control, but it doesn't look like anytime soon.
Yeah, it's amazing how landlords are getting wealthier, the French are getting wealthier, the lawyers are getting wealthier, and British taxpayers, Jamie Jenkins, well, almost 600,000 of them, are getting a lot poorer. Jamie Jenkins, superb data. Thanks for coming on the show today and sharing it with us. Thank you very much. Now, meanwhile, further chaos over the pond because thousands of protesters took to the streets of Los Angeles following President Trump's illegal migration crackdown as tensions continue to escalate. Astonishing pictures there on your screen of cars going up in flames. Let's now speak with the US journalist Nelson Aspen. Nelson, I'm struggling to get my head around the fact of a president who was elected to clamp down on illegal immigration clamps down on illegal immigration, and the governor of California says, hey, that's not very nice, and the people take to the streets protesting. What's going on?
No, it's not just the governor, Martin. It's the mayor of Los Angeles. It's the council persons in California and a lot of the citizenry. But this is far from a peaceful protest, as you can obviously see. And what's infuriating to me as an American, as a former resident of Los Angeles for over 20 years, is you're exactly right. President Trump campaigned and won on this issue. So it should not be any surprise, as much as the politicians are claiming it is, that they have had to get to this point to enforce the federal law. It's affecting the local businesses, the local residents, the real estate, which is just recovering from the wildfires. And I think most heartbreakingly, it's affecting the legal immigrants who have come to California in search of a better life. So it's destroying everything. And you can't tell me that these are spontaneous attacks against the state. When I lived there in 1992, when the riots were happening then, that was almost a more emotional, personal, spontaneous kind of event, as opposed to this, which seems coordinated, financed, and very well orchestrated. It's maddening.
And Nelson, I wonder if that's because during the Biden administration, we saw Black Lives Matter riots, Antifa riots became a part of the fabric of the electoral cycle. Of course, they were called mostly peaceful by the media, even though towns in Portland were burning. Is that what's happening here? The American public, the protesters have got used to the police indulging them, standing off. And now there's different management and it's right royally kicking off.
Well, and they want to blame the federal government, which, since the local government is not doing anything, the state government, the federal government has to step in to protect public safety. And Trump, he is doubling down on it. He said in an overnight tweet, I'll bring in the troops. He is ready to stand his ground and make sure that his federal laws are enforced. And Governor Gavin Newsom, who himself, of course, is poised for his own presidential run next time around, is daring the immigration authorities to arrest him. And I think that's probably very calculated as well. Look at how well Donald Trump's mugshot served him when he was campaigning for president. I think Gavin Newsom would love nothing more than to have a similar mugshot to use in his future campaign.
Yeah, the trouble with that, it might play well in liberal states like California, but I put it to you, he looked like a mug to the voters across America who voted to clamp down on illegal immigration. Nelson Aspen, it's always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you very much again for joining us on GB News. Thank you. Now, if you're in search of some holiday sun this year, then here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. It's looking fairly settled across much of the Mediterranean as we go through the next couple of days. Turning increasingly hot, especially for parts of Italy. For Iberia and the Canaries, we could just see a few showers around, but plenty of sunshine around too. But as I mentioned, for much of the central parts of the Med, lots of sunshine around, turning increasingly hot here. For parts of Rome, could see highs reaching the mid-30s as we go through the course of the week. And for much of the Med, really, as you can see, plenty of sunshine around.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Yeah, you can, but no one likes a snitch. And I think office politics are often hard enough and enough of a minefield without getting involved. I think you have to leave it to the management. Unless you're their manager or their supervisor, I think trust in the process, don't stick your nose in, because everyone always shoots the messenger. And in my experience, whenever I have flagged anything, it has normally turned round and bitten me rather nastily. So I wouldn't be getting involved.
But everybody suffers, Steve. That's my point of view. We're all being dragged down by these people who aren't pulling their weight.
Oh, I say bring on the snitch, whatever you want to call it, because at the end of the day, of course, you know, I go to work to earn my money. I don't go to work to earn your money. And coming back to the point the other contributor makes, you know, if the manager is a good manager, and let's say they are, then they'll obviously keep it confidential as well. The other thing we have to remember is that if someone is not pulling their weight, it builds up resentment. It builds up frustration and irritation. The other thing I would say as well is that a lot of teams out there, especially sales teams and customer service teams, are bonused on the team result. So, you know, if someone's behaving like a tortoise and I'm behaving like a racehorse, I'm sorry, I'm snitching.
Yeah, I mean, Sally, it's not fair on the whole team, is it, if somebody isn't pulling their weight?
No, that's absolutely true. But in a sales environment, that person will not last long. They will be thrown out. It just doesn't happen. And maybe I'm just not that much of a team player. I don't really care what anyone else is doing. As long as I'm all right, then I'm not going to worry about anybody else.
GB News, the People's Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, the Women's Safety Initiative are calling on the government for change.
Women's Safety Initiative have released factual statistics showing that 1 in 4 sex crimes is committed by foreign nationals here in the UK. And considering they only make up 6% of the population, this is incredibly disproportionate.
Well, the group believes that mass immigration is making Britain less safe for young women. We can now speak with a campaigner from the Women's Safety Initiative, and that's Morgan. Morgan, welcome to the show, and thank you for speaking out. We saw in your video there, Morgan, some of the statistics are simply astonishing, and that is you say that 1/4 of all sex crimes in the UK are now committed by foreign nationals, despite the fact they only make up 6% of the population. It's incredible stuff.
Yes, so foreign nationals only, make up 25% of sex crimes here in the UK. They are also 3.5 times more likely to be arrested for sex crimes in the UK also. And 48 nationalities have a higher arrest rates than Brits here in the UK also, which obviously is incredibly disproportionate.
And Morgan, what motivated you and inspired you to stand up like this? I mean, it can't be easy to put your head above the parapet like this.
Yeah, so I felt compelled to address almost an everyday occurrence for me. I commute to work, and I would say over the past possibly year or so, it has become incredibly difficult to do so without discomfort. I've had foreign nationals record me on their phones. I'm not sure where those recordings go, but obviously I would like to know. And also having foreign nationals as well on FaceTime. To I don't know who, possibly friends, family, relatives, and they record me as I'm walking past. You can tell that they're on FaceTime because they're having a conversation whilst they're doing so. Furthermore, I've experienced other sort of distressing situations, such as being pressed up against, uncomfortably stared at, and even followed home, which is incredibly, obviously, scary for women, and it is just not fair.
And Morgan, the issue about this is a lot of people feel that the politicians have simply turned the other way and they're not particularly interested in that. Why do you think that is?
Honestly, I wish I had an answer for you. I feel like there's a lot of complicity at the moment regarding this situation. And if I could get to the root cause and find out why, then I would absolutely target the root cause. However, at this moment in time, we aren't too sure why these individuals are being protected. But what we do know is that women in the UK are being treated as second-class citizens over these individuals, which is completely unfair, and it needs to be changed. So we want to kind of establish the root cause for this. Unfortunately, at this moment in time, I can't give you a reason. I wish I could.
And I know that other members of your initiative, I know we've had Jess get on the show before, very, very articulate, very, very intelligent groups of young women, and you're fighting back.
Yes, absolutely. We are fighting. We've stood up for it for far too long. I know for a fact myself, I was almost abducted by a foreign national at 14 years old. And he told the police that he thought I was 16 and the police actually let him get away with it. Whether or not I was 16 or 14, it doesn't matter. If I'm grabbed down an alleyway, it's not something up for debate, unfortunately. This needs to be addressed. And I think women all over the country are getting sick and tired of this treatment. And I think that this is a movement that will continue to move forward.
OK, well done on speaking up and well done on your bravery. That's Morgan, the campaigner there from the Women's Safety Initiative. Thanks for joining us today on GB News. Now, I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Don't go anywhere, because up next, I'll be joined in the studio by Lee Anderson, the Red Wall Rottweiler. He's in fighting mood. But first, here's your weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine at first today in the south, but mostly cloudy, and it's increasingly damp, that rain persisting through the rest of the day across many northern parts of the country because of these weather fronts that are moving in at the moment. High pressure just to the south of the UK, keeping things dry for the time being, but really as we go into the evening, the rain in the north starts to spill south. It's on and off rain. There will be some heavy bursts for parts of northern England, North Wales, but through the hours of darkness it does turn light and patchy, drizzly outbreaks of rain more than heavy bursts. And it stays dry to the southeast, drier to the north with showers following the main area of rain, but for most it's a cloudy and mild night. It's then a dull start to the day across much of England and Wales as these weak weather fronts sink south. We've got extensive low cloud across parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south. Outbreaks of light rain on and off through the morning. Brighter skies for northern England, much of Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some heavy showers for northern Scotland, but in between spells of sunshine and feeling a little fresher behind that area of cloud as it clears to the south. But it's going to feel fairly muggy in the south, I suspect, with the cloud persisting until early afternoon in places. And the drizzly rain will continue as well, but it will become increasingly restricted to the south of England after lunchtime. Brighter skies emerge then for the northern two-thirds of the UK. Some fairly widespread sunshine. Temperatures up to 18, 19 Celsius, certainly feeling more pleasant compared with today. But in the south, it's a cloudier picture. Then as we go into Tuesday night, we're going to see a lot of clear skies at first. And that leads us on to a mostly fine Wednesday. It's going to start to feel warmer, and it's going to particularly feel humid on Thursday and Friday with the risk of thundery downpours.
Expect a warm front moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Road users on the A82 northbound between Lomond Gate roundabout and Renton Road slip should exercise caution due to a road traffic collision causing restrictions. The M4 from Pentila and Baglan to Landarcy remains closed for planned maintenance with diversions in place. On the M5 southbound at junction 23 in Somerset, a serious crash has closed all lanes. Normal traffic is expected to resume by 7:45 this evening. And on the trains, cross-country services may experience disruptions due to industrial action. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For a chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very, very good afternoon to you on this happy Monday. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK.
This winter, 9 million pensioners will now receive the winter fuel payments.
Yeah, after a massive backlash and a battering at the local elections in May, today the Chancellor Rachel Reeves did a huge U-turn on the winter fuel allowance. 9 million OAPs will now get the payment. But will pensioners forgive Labour and forget, or is the damage done?
I believe we can make Wales much, much better than it's been after 26 years of continuous and failing Labour rule.
Earlier today, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, promised to put Welsh people first by reopening the Port Talbot steel plant and also coal mines across the nation, making sure that locals get housing before asylum seekers. I'm joined in the studio by Lee Anderson to ask him, can Reform really make Wales great again? And shocking new figures seen by GB News reveal that Britain's £4.7 billion annual bill to keep immigrants in hotels takes every penny of tax from 583,000 workers. And that's a city the size of Manchester going to work so the asylum seekers get everything paid for free. And Israeli authorities have intercepted Greta Thunberg's so-called Freedom Flotilla, which they called it the selfie yacht, saying, Greta, the party's over. Well, Greta and co will now be ordered to watch videos of the October the 7th Hamas atrocities. Should we just have let them go into Gaza and left them behind? And the Police Federation has warned that Rachel Reeves' policing is broken and faces significant cuts. And that's ahead of the Chancellor's spending review this Wednesday. Is the system completely broken? I'll be speaking to a Police and Crime Commissioner next who thinks that is the case. That's all coming up in your next hour. Well, to show it's a pleasure to have your company. Joining the studio by Lee Anderson from Reform UK. He's in fighting form. I want to ask him about the launch earlier on in Wales. Can Reform UK really make Wales great again? Or are they toxic outsiders who are welcome in Wales? That's what the First Minister told GB News earlier on. Of course, they would say that. And there's a lot of policy details there. Is it time to reopen the Port Talbot steel plant? Is it time to reopen the coal mines? Well, Lee Anderson worked down the pit. My dad worked down the pit. Is that a vote winner? Or is that the kind of thing that reverses net zero? Will give Ed Miliband sleepless nights, and perhaps that makes it a good thing. And also there's some great policy detail in there about putting Welsh people first on housing lists and simply drawing up the drawbridge to asylum seekers pushed around the country, pushed into Wales by Westminster. What do you make of all that lot? Get in touch. gbnews.com/your say is the way to do it. But now it's time for your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. The top story just after 5 o'clock. More than three-quarters of pensioners will now receive the winter fuel payment as the government makes a major U-turn. Chancellor Rachel Reeves says 9 million pensioners in England and Wales earning £35,000 or less will get the support this winter, worth up to £300. It comes after over 10 million missed out last year when it was restricted to those on pension credit, a move widely criticised. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says the Prime Minister should apologise, while Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey has welcomed the change. Funding for the £1.2 billion policy will be set out in the autumn budget. NATO chief Mark Rutte has warned Britain and its allies they better learn to speak Russian if defence spending isn't ramped up. In a major speech in London, he said NATO must commit to spending 5% of GDP, including a 3.5% core defence spend to deter threats from Russia. He called for a quantum leap in military power, warning hope is not a strategy. He says NATO needs 4 times more air and missile defence, plus millions more shells, tanks and medics. The NHS says it urgently needs 1 million regular blood donors to avoid a national shortage. Just 2% of the population currently sustain England's blood supply. With stocks so low, officials say a red alert could soon be triggered, risking public safety. The call follows a cyber attack last year that hit London hospitals and pushed services into crisis. There's a critical need for O-negative blood and more black donors to help treat patients with sickle cell. NHS chiefs say donating takes under an hour but saves lives for years. The government is looking at plans to cap how long children can spend on social media, including a 2-hour daily limit per app and a 10 p.m. curfew. Technology Secretary Peter Kyle says the addictive nature of some platforms is under review, but campaigners say action is long overdue. Ian Russell, whose daughter Molly died after viewing harmful content, says only tougher laws will protect young lives. The Online Safety Act passed last year, but key parts are still to be enforced. Those are the latest headlines for now. Plenty more still to come right here with Martin.
Thank you, Sam. Now, earlier on today, the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, said his party will be the only real competitor to Labour in the Welsh elections next May. Now, Reform has pledged to defy the government to reopen coal mines in Wales and indeed the steel plant at Port Talbot if the party wins power next year. Now, Mr Farage also took a fiery swipe at Labour, saying they're in blind panic, and even took credit for the government's winter fuel payment U-turn announcement earlier on today. Well, to break your stories down, I'm joined in the studio by GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and also the Reform UK MP for Ashfield, Lee Anderson. Let's start with you first, Nigel Nelson. So Mr Farage, in typically rambunctious form, saying he's going to make Wales great again, put Welsh people first, reopen the steel plant at Port Talbot, reopen some coal mines across Wales and across the rest of the UK. And it went down, I've got to say, pretty well with the electorate. What are your thoughts on that announcement earlier on today?
Whether or not you can actually do it. So first of all, he's talking about returning blast furnaces to Port Talbot. There's a big question mark over whether that can happen. There's a second question mark over whether it should happen. That at the moment, the government have invested £500 million on electric arc furnaces, so that's the green variety. If you look at the way the world is going, that they're buying materials made of green energy. If you brought the blast furnaces back, there'd be a question about exports, whether or not you could actually sell that steel to other countries.
But he made the point, Mr Farage, also, we're about to go through a building revolution and a rearmament revolution. That takes a lot of steel. Why not make the steel in Britain? Why import steel from China? Why rely upon electric arc furnace steel, which actually costs a huge amount of power because we've got the most expensive electricity in the Western world? It's recycled steel, melted down washing machines and whatnot. It's not as strong as virgin steel. And the steel that we import, we're importing coal from Japan, from America, from Australia. We've got good coal in the ground in Whitehaven and Wales.
But we're also sending 8 million tonnes of steel abroad to be processed, which we wouldn't need to do on the basis that's 80% of the stuff that would go into electric arc furnaces here. That's going abroad, whereas actually we could manufacture that stuff in this country.
OK, let's bring in now Lee Anderson, Reform UK MP for Ashfield. What do you make of the fact that the Welsh First Minister today, we had her on the previous show, and she was saying Reform UK aren't welcome in Wales, they're outsiders, they're divisive, they're toxic, and they're not welcome here.
Well, we'll see next May, won't we, Martin, when we have the Senate elections in Wales, where we are predicted to possibly win and take control of Wales. But, I mean, more negativity from Nigel. I mean, this is wonderful news for the people of South Wales. Coal mines potentially reopening, steelworks. You know, this is going to produce thousands and thousands of jobs and knock-on jobs. Not just that, Martin, they're well-paid jobs. And this is an area which has been decimated by deindustrialisation, and just think of the benefits, the social benefits as well. People in full-time employment, earning lots of money, regenerating the whole area. This is a vision, it's ambition from Nigel Farage. We fully support it. And again, negative Nigel and his nincompoops in the Labour Party. But we'll cast water on this. It's like a damp squid. This is positive. It's good news for the people of Wales. And why not? We need steel. We need coal. Why not make it in our country and produce it in our country? It makes perfect sense. And billions of pounds go to the Treasury as well.
Negative Nigel, the nincompoop.
Well, there you go. I'm not against reopening Port Talbot. I think that I hope it does reopen, but I hope it opens with electric arc furnaces. And with them, if you want to regenerate Wales...
But Nigel, we're buying steel goods from all around the world made by coal blast furnaces. We're just a bunch of hypocrites in this country.
Well, what I'm arguing is that is about to end, and people won't buy steel that is not made through the electric.
But we're buying solar panels from China made by coal-fired power stations.
Wouldn't it help Wales hugely if Port Talbot was making the steel for solar panels, for wind farms, the kind of things that actually would regenerate this country?
And what about, we could have that, Nigel, and coal-fired blast furnaces to make the proper steel that we need to arm our country over the next 10, 20, 30 years even.
I appreciate that there are certain things that an electric arc furnace can't do, and we'd have to actually buy that in. But the benefits of being able to use...
I think £800 million to produce coal-fired blast furnace steel in India to sell it back to us. It's absolute madness.
But the benefits of not sending 80% of our recycled steel to be processed abroad, actually processed in this country, that would really help Welsh industry.
But we could have both, Nigel, couldn't we?
Well, but I don't. You can't stick a blast furnace by the side of an electric arc. So it's a choice between one and the other. Even if you could actually put a blast furnace back into Port Talbot again.
Yeah. What about your net zero targets? Are you concerned that they might be obliterated?
Well, I mean, obviously, part of this is to do with net zero. That steel at the moment pumps out 14% of all manufacturing emissions in this country. So obviously, you want to try and stop that. But I'm more interested in the economic benefits that a green revolution will bring. We could get 650,000 jobs.
Who's told you this? Ed Miliband? Yeah, he keeps bleating on about it in the chamber. We've yet to see any proof of this, Nigel. It's a load of nonsense.
Well, but you're not going to get any proof yet because we're gradually doing it. Yeah. And we'll find out in the spending review on Wednesday just how much money Ed Miliband has got to do that.
Yeah. All right, gents, let's move on to another eye-catching policy announcement today, which I think largely went under the radar, and that was this notion of Welsh people first on housing lists, Lee Anderson, and in particular, the ending of the use of any building for asylum seeker accommodation, and it's specifically ending funding to the Wales Refugee Council and ending the nation of sanctuary for asylum seekers and any funding that goes with it. In essence, that means the Welsh Government will defund the usual routes of getting asylum seekers into Wales. So what's the thinking behind that?
Well, let's just get this right, Martin. They're not genuine asylum seekers, as I keep saying on GB News. These are illegal migrants coming over the channel or in the back of lorries, posing as genuine asylum seekers. They abuse our system, and not one, it's my opinion, not one of these people should be given anywhere to live in this house other than temporary accommodation on the shores of Dover and detained and deported as quickly as possible.
So back to this thing here. It's going to put you on a total collision course potentially with Westminster.
So what?
So if just say Reform are the dominant party in the Welsh Parliament, in the Senate, and just say Westminster says, well, we're going to keep sending asylum seekers your way. What's going to happen?
What we need to do is bust them out and put them into some of these Lib Dem, like Nigel said, I think it was yesterday on TV, put them into some of these Lib Dem constituencies, Labour constituencies, and people like Nigel Nelson here and Chopper and the other lefties that you have on the show, stick them in their attic. That'll teach them.
So basically, this would be pulling up the drawbridge to asylum seekers in Wales. What about people who say, well, that's a dereliction of our national duty? That's racist.
Martin, I think you had a clip on earlier where it said 25% of the sex crimes committed in this country were committed by foreign nationals. We know that people are coming over the channel, they're getting up to all sorts of mischief, committing crimes, murders, sexual attacks. I don't want these people in my country, and you speak to anybody in Ashfield, in where I come from, where I represent, they do not want these people in our country. And if people like Nigel Nelson and the rest of the wet lefties want these people, stick them in their constituencies, see how they like it.
But this is another unrealistic reform policy.
It's not, Nigel.
As you well know...
It's only unrealistic if you're weak and got no backbone.
Immigration policy is handled from Westminster.
Yeah.
So talking about the idea that you can pull up the drawbridge on Wales is like saying, oh, let's have a standing army for Wales.
We've got a stomach for the
Let's
fight.
get Wales to have a foreign policy.
No.
These are actually reserved powers for the Westminster government.
We have the stomach for a fight in Wales, and we will have a fight over this, Nigel, and we will put the drawbridge up. We'll have a battle with Westminster, because the people in Wales are on our side. We could do a lefty thing and roll over and give in and get them all in and create mayhem on the streets of Wales. We don't want that.
But you'd be overturning the British Constitution as it stands.
So what?
Well,
so what?
So how do you actually take powers away from Westminster that they already have?
What you do in Wales as a government, they have to use every single lever available to stop putting these illegal migrants in accommodation. It's as simple as that.
And I think it is fair to say that if you withdrew specific policy points that came out today, like the nation of sanctuary for asylum seekers, and if you defunded the Wales Refugee Council, that is the conduit of distribution, and Labour councils get a premium per head of every asylum seeker they take. That's current policy, and I guess Reform are saying that would end, and it would stop a channel, and that's the kind of power that I think a devolved Parliament is meant to have, right? And that's the point.
Of course it is, Martin. We've got to put the Welsh people first. And I'm sick to death of people in our country and in the devolved nations being classed as second-class citizens. And these people coming over the channel, they get freebies, they get free housing, they get legal aid, they can apply for asylum. Even if they don't get asylum passed, Martin, they still stop in this country and they get everything that's not on offer. Meanwhile, the grafters in this country, the people that get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, there's 600,000 of those in this country going to work every single day to pay for these illegal migrants coming out of the channel. It's an absolute disgrace.
And that was some figures we had earlier on from the Sun newspaper today. Let's talk about the dramatic reinstatement of your chairman, Zia Yousaf. I spoke to Nigel Farage in this studio on Thursday night. He said he was very upset about Mr Yousaf resigning. Now he's back.
Yes, I mean, I was gutted when I saw he'd left. But you know what? I spoke to Zia on, I think it was yesterday morning. We had a long chat and welcomed him back. Look, this man is extremely talented. In my mind, he's been doing far too much for the party. He's had about 4 or 5 roles. He's been the chairman, he's been doing the Doge stuff, the membership, the policy stuff. When I was in the Tory party, we had a chairman, 3 or 4 deputy chairmen, I was one of them, and about 5 vice chairmen. You know, it's about 10 people doing that job.
But what sort of look do you think it is when you have a chairman who actually decides to resign at one moment with the announcement that he doesn't think getting Nigel Farage as the next Prime Minister is a good use of his time? 48 hours later, he comes back and said, "Oh, it was all a great mistake, great mistake."
Well, we all make mistakes, Nigel, don't we? We all have bad days, we all have off days. You know, when there's that much pressure on one individual, and it is a lot of pressure.
But politics is full of pressure.
Yeah, it is full of pressure.
You need the right people in politics to actually do that.
You name me a politician in there that's not throwing the dummy out once in a while. I think everybody, in that cauldron feels the pressure. It does, politics, for me, is like being, you're either up there on a high or you're down there on a low. And sometimes when you're on a low, you do feel like ragging it in. I've had them moments, but you know what? That place is not going to beat me.
But as you know, it's a 24/7 job. I mean, that's the whole part. Once you choose it, you've chosen it.
You're in a cauldron, you're in a goldfish bowl, everybody's looking at you. And some of the abuse that Zia's had online, it's unbelievable.
Well, the abuse is inexcusable.
Nigel, he's working 100 hours a week, he's doing all sorts of stuff what we don't see behind the scenes, and all he gets no pay, by the way, and all he gets is a load of online abuse and very little thanks.
No, I mean, the abuse is absolutely appalling. When he shouldn't have that.
No, he shouldn't.
Equally, he should actually stick to his guns all the way through if he really supports the Reform Party.
Yes, we're not perfect, Nigel. None of us are. We all have our bad days.
OK.
All right, gentlemen, let's talk about the cat was amongst pigeons last week. Sarah Potion, of course, at PMQ's, talking about the Burka ban, and now it appears Kemi Badenoch seems to be following the Reform Party's lead on that. She said yesterday that employers should have the power to ban the burqa. I mean, are they just...
It's a bit weak, though, Martin, isn't it? I think it's face coverings, not just the burqa, should be banned full stop. It's a security risk. You know, you look at the other countries in Europe who we aspire to be like, we want to rejoin all the time, this lot over there, they've got the burqa ban. Some Muslim countries have got the burqa ban, and other countries around the world have got this ban. I think I think we should have a ban, and if I had a vote tomorrow, I'd vote for it.
So Mr Tice, Richard Tice, he also backed that position.
Yeah.
Nigel Farage, when I asked him about it, he said we need to have a national conversation about it. Zia Yousaf initially seemed to use your phrase, threw his toys out the pram, but now he seems to be in support of it. Will it be Reform Party policy to do that?
I would imagine so. At the next, I would imagine that before the next election we'll have a policy on this. But as it stands, if you speak to any of the 5 Reform UK MPs, I think we all want to ban it.
OK, well, just stick with us, because earlier this afternoon, the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch gave her thoughts on Labour's U-turn on the winter fuel allowance.
Well, we've been campaigning for them to reverse the winter fuel allowance, so I'm glad that the government has finally done this. But what took them so long? I asked Keir Starmer 6 times at the dispatch box, at PMQs, why was he doing this? He needed to reverse it. Labour MPs voted again and again and again when we were telling them that it was the wrong thing to do. And now here we are with a U-turn. Let's see exactly where we land with the announcement that they've made today. The point is that this is complete chaos. Why did Labour do this? It was because they wanted to give a bung to their friends in the unions, so they took money away from pensioners and gave it to train drivers. We would never have done this in the first place. So this is a mess of their own making.
So that's Kemi Badenoch saying that the Conservatives never would have done it. Lee Anderson, the Reform Party, has been consistent. You'd think this was a terrible idea from the beginning. I guess the big question is, now that 9 million British pensioners will now get the winter fuel allowance, do you think that's this matter dealt with, that the voters will forgive the Labour Party?
No, they won't, Martin. What's done is done. They've been, you know, it's quite a wicked and cruel thing to do, I think, to pick on our pensioners. You know, people that's put a shift in for 40 or 50 years, you know, get a meagre pension, a meagre state pension. To take 300 quid off them was absolutely disgraceful. And people will remember, yes, they've backtracked only because they've been forced by Reform UK to backtrack on this policy. And I tell you what, some of their backbenchers have been absolutely livid about this because I've personally spoke to them.
OK, Lee Anderson, thank you very much for joining us in the studio today from Reform UK and, of course, Nigel Nelson. Gentlemen, thank you. Now, coming next, the Police Federation has warned Rachel Reeves that policing is broken and faces significant cuts. I'll be joined by Police and Crime Commissioner next, with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we're in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:24 with me, Martin Daubney, on this beautiful, happy Monday here on GB News. Now, the Police Federation has warned that Rachel Reeves that policing is broken and faces significant cuts. Now, that's ahead of the Chancellor's spending review this Wednesday, of course. And police chiefs say that Labour's election pledges to halve violence against women and girls and tackle knife crime and rebuild neighbourhood policing will be at risk without proper funding. Well, let's now speak with the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, Donna Jones. Donna, always a pleasure to have your company. So in an open letter today, Donna Jones, the heads of the Police Superintendents Association and the Police Federation of England and Wales, they both believe that policing in England and Wales is broken. Do you think that's the case? And if so, why?
Well, thank you for having me on, Martin, to talk about such an important issue. And yes, things are really tough in policing. We spend over £1 billion a year on IT, for example, in policing. So when they talk about this inflation or sort of at inflation CSR, comprehensive spending review settlement that we think we might get on Wednesday, in reality, that means that we will end up having less police officers on the streets again next year than we've got this year. Labour came into power promising more policing and to rebuild neighbourhood policing, as you know, the neighbourhood policing model. But as I say, in reality, we've now got less police officers doing less patrols, and I'll tell you why. It is actually about the taxation that happened last year, that employers NI. Now, whilst the policing minister made sure and the Home Secretary ensured that police and crime commissioners were given the money for the NI increases, what they didn't do is give us the money for their overtime. And I can tell you now, no police force in this country can cope without their particularly local policing officers doing overtime to keep streets safe. So in reality, all police and crime commissioners and chief constables have seen a real-time cut over the last year because of that disastrous NI increase.
And Donna Jones, as well as the pay, I mean, one of the findings of the report here says when a young constable looks down at their pay slips and they wonder how they'll make rent this month, something is deeply wrong. But also beyond that, Donna Jones, there are more experienced police officers, many years of experience, who are actually looking at the way that the top brass treat them. We had an astonishing case last week on GB News where an officer has been sacked because of a disrespectful way he arrested a 15-year-old who was carrying a knife. There's a feeling, Donna Jones, that when push comes to shove, when the chips are down, often people on the floor, the bobbies that on the beat, they're not being backed and they're getting fed up with it.
Do you know what, Martin? I've been working in the public sector now for almost 20 years. I've been the leader of a city council in the UK. I've worked with social workers. I've worked with bin men. I've worked with traffic, civil engineers. And I can say that the police men and women that work in this country and police staff members are so brave and they work so hard, particularly in the Metropolitan Police Service, where they are facing unprecedented levels of risk daily. Yes, they don't start on a huge amount of money. Most PCs, police constables, will start on around £29,000 a year. If you're in London, you're probably looking at nearer 34 or 35,000 because of the increased London waiting. It is a really pressurised job. They never know what they're running into. When it comes to police regulations and the situation you're talking about there of police officers being sacked, well, I think the IOPC, the Independent Office of Police Complaints, have said themselves that they think the police regulations are too strenuous. They do need to be relaxed somewhat. And I would urge the Home Secretary to do that review. In fact, I have urged her to do that face to face. But back to the money thing, I think we need to be really realistic in this country. We need more police officers. We are facing threats that are unprecedented. We've still got uncontrolled immigration into the country. We just simply don't know who we're housing here at the moment and what other risk is coming in. We need to be investing in the National Crime Agency. We need to be investing in counter-terrorism policing. But really importantly, we need to continue to invest and build our local policing officer, our local bobbies, and those people that are walking the beat. And unfortunately, that's where the public are likely to see a reduction in foot patrols over the next year because, as I say, a number of issues, but mostly because we're not getting the investment into policing that we need.
Donna Jones had an incredible guest on earlier on in the show. Her name was Morgan. She started her own initiative. It's called the Women's Safety Initiative. It's a collective of young women across the nation who've been harassed on the street by immigrants, people coming in from overseas. They said a quarter of sex crimes now committed by foreign nationals versus 6% of the population. Clearly there, a big overrepresentation of that. Is that one of the types of things you're seeing in your patch? And is that the type of thing that you think justifies the fact you need more funding and more officers?
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, we have got increased risks. And I think the prison population now, I'm the National Criminal Justice Lead for Police and Crime Commissioners, as well as being the Commissioner in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. And the prison population is approaching 90,000. It's an absolute breaking point. It's at capacity. It's this reason why trials are being pushed back. It's this reason why criminals are being released from prison early. Now, one of the things that the previous Conservative government tried to do, and in fact, Yvette Cooper as Home Secretary has said that she wants to push through, is to be deporting foreign national criminals after they have been convicted. So as long as we have what we call bilateral agreements between Britain and their country of origin, and we can be assured that that person will not be released from prison when they get back to their country of origin, ready to then travel back to the UK, they will be deported. This is what the current government and the previous government were working on. Now, I really welcome that, because if that frees up some 13,000 or more prison spaces in UK prisons, which then saves taxpayers billions of pounds that we don't have to spend on building more prisons, then I say bring it on, and they can't do it quick enough. Because actually this country, we have seen, as I say, increased risk. We have seen the male prison population growing exponentially, and we have a duty to protect the men, women and children in this country from risks coming in from abroad. And if we can be deporting particularly sex offenders, as you've mentioned, but in fact all foreign national criminals, let's get that done.
OK, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure to have your company. That's Donna Jones, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Now, a spokesman for the Metropolitan Police told GB News this. Officers spoke to the victim, who shared his intention to... Oh, there's a different one. That is not a statement for this story. We will speak later on. Plenty more to come throughout the rest of the show. But for now, if you're travelling home from work or from school, here is a traffic and the travel update. First, stay safe, and secondly, stick with us.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Expect restrictions on the A82 northbound between Lomondgate roundabout and Renton Road slip due to an incident. The M4 westbound from Junction 41 Pentyler to Junction 43. Landesey is closed for maintenance with diversions. A lane is closed on the M6 southbound near Wigan at Junction 27 due to a broken down vehicle. Delays are expected on the M1 southbound at Junction 33 in Rotherham due to a collision. Traffic is slowed at Windsor and Maidenhead's M4 westbound exit slip by an accident at Junction 8. And on the trains, Chiltern Railways is disrupted between High Wycombe and Haddenham and Thames Parkway, Aylesbury. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Now, there's more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including Israeli authorities have intercepted Greta Thunberg's so-called Freedom Flotilla, but they called it the selfie yacht, saying the party's over. That's next, but first, here's your latest news headlines.
Very good evening to you. 5:30, the top story tonight. More than three-quarters of pensioners will now receive the winter fuel payment, as the government has made a major U-turn. Chancellor Rachel Reeves says 9 million pensioners in England and Wales earning £35,000 or less will get the support this winter. It's worth up to £300. It comes after over 10 million missed out last year, when it was restricted to those on pension credit, a move widely criticised. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says the Prime Minister should now apologise, while Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey has welcomed the change. Funding for the £1.2 billion policy will be set out in the autumn budget. NATO's chief has warned Britain and its allies they better learn to speak Russian if defence spending isn't ramped up. In a major speech in London, he called on all allies to commit to spending 5% of GDP, including a 3.5% core defence spend, to deter threats from Russia. Rutte called for a quantum leap in military power too, warning hope is not a strategy. He says NATO needs 4 times more air and missile defence, plus millions more shells, tanks and medics. The NHS says it urgently needs more regular blood donors to avoid a national shortage. Just 2% of the population currently sustains England's blood supply. With stocks now so low, officials say a red alert could soon be triggered, risking public safety. The call follows a cyber attack last year that hit a number of London hospitals and pushed services into crisis. There's also a critical need for O-negative blood and more black donors to help treat patients with sickle cell. NHS chiefs say donating takes just under an hour, but can save lives for years. And the government is also looking at plans to cap how long children can spend on social media, including a 2-hour daily limit per app and a 10 p.m. curfew. The Technology Secretary, Peter Kyle, says the addictive nature of some platforms is under review, but campaigners say action is too long overdue. Ian Russell, whose daughter Molly died after viewing harmful content online, says only tougher laws will protect young lives. The Online Safety Act passed last year, but key parts are still to be enforced. You're up to date just after 5:30. I'll be back with the news at 6 o'clock. Next, though, let's take a look at the markets.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's how the markets are closing this evening. The pound will buy you $1.3558 and €1.1874. The price of gold is £2,457.85 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 has closed the day today at 8,832 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine at first today in the south, but mostly cloudy, and it's increasingly damp, that rain persisting through the rest of the day across many northern parts of the country because of these weather fronts that are moving in at the moment. High pressure just to the south of the UK, keeping things dry for the time being, but really as we go into the evening, the rain in the north starts to spill south. It's on and off rain. There will be some heavy bursts for parts of northern England, North Wales, but through the hours of darkness it does turn light and patchy, drizzly outbreaks of rain more than heavy bursts. And it stays dry to the southeast, drier to the north with showers following the main area of rain, but for most it's a cloudy and mild night. It's then a dull start to the day across much of England and Wales as these weak weather fronts sink south. We've got an extensive low cloud across parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south. Outbreaks of light rain on and off through the morning. Brighter skies for northern England, much of Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some heavy showers for northern Scotland, but in between spells of sunshine and feeling a little fresher behind that area of cloud as it clears to the south. But it's going to feel fairly muggy in the south, I suspect, with the cloud persisting until early afternoon in places, and the drizzly rain will continue as well, but it will become increasingly restricted to the south of England after lunchtime. Brighter skies emerge then for the northern two-thirds of the UK, some fairly widespread sunshine, temperatures up to 18, 19 Celsius, certainly feeling more pleasant compared with today, but in the south it's a cloudier picture. Then as we go into Tuesday night, we're going to see a lot of clear skies at first, and that leads us on to a mostly fine Wednesday. It's going to start to feel warmer, and it's going to particularly feel humid on Thursday and Friday with the risk of thundery downpours.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 5:39. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, earlier on today, we discussed the investigation from the Mail, which uncovered a cash-for-visa scam exploiting the UK's skilled worker routes. Well, we'd like to reiterate the Home Office have indeed suspended the firm's sponsorship licence and urgent investigations continue. Moving on now to the so-called Freedom Flotilla carrying Greta Thunberg and 11 others. It's been stopped by the IDF on its way to Gaza. Now, the climate activist claims the goal of the voyage was to raise awareness of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the Israeli government has criticised what it calls a selfie yacht stunt and has said that those on board the vessel will be forced now to watch videos of Hamas's October the 7th atrocities. Well, to analyse the story further, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, Major Andrew Fox. Andrew, it's a pleasure to have your company, and I wanted especially to reach out to you today when I heard about what Greta Thunberg will now be made to do, to look at those videos of the Hamas atrocities, because, Major Fox, you've seen those videos. In fact, I think you're amongst one of the first Brits to see them, right, when you went to Israel. And I just want to make sure our viewers understand, you know what combat is. You've served several tours of combat throughout the Middle East, in Bosnia and Northern Ireland. And I recall when you told me what you saw in those videos and how it moved you, I wonder if you think that's a fitting punishment for Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, I don't think I was one of the first Brits to see it. It was May last year when I was shown the video. The videos are the most brutal thing she will ever see. It's the most brutal thing I've ever seen. You know, in spite of everything I've done and been through in Afghanistan, nothing I saw over there came close to what Hamas did on 7th of October. I can't describe it to you because we're before the watershed, but it is beyond the imagination, the wickedness, the cruelty and the glee with which they did it. There's one scene in particular which I think stands out where one of the Hamas fighters phones his parents to tell them how many Jews he'd just killed, as if this was something to be celebrated, and it defies description.
Major Fox, when you see Greta Thunberg on her yacht, when you see her wearing her scarf, when you see the fact they clearly think they are making a difference, they're humanitarians, do you think they have any idea about the kind of people they're supporting, or do you think they've just been completely and utterly brainwashed?
No, I don't think they do. And I think when they are shown the video, they will almost certainly brush it off as Israeli PR or Hasbara, as they call it. You know, the Hamas and their media backers, they have done everything they can over the last 20 months to discredit the footage from 7th of October. They've tried to claim it was the Israeli army that actually did the killing through the Hannibal Directive, which, as we know, is complete nonsense. They've tried very much to deny the sexual assaults that happened on that day. And I've not only seen the evidence above and beyond the video that Greta's going to see, but I've also interviewed people who were at the Nova Festival who saw sexual assaults taking place. And yet, of course, there's this industry that's built up around minimising 7th of October in order to maximise the impact of what Israel has subsequently done in Gaza. And so I think any attempt to reduce this decades-old conflict to a simple case of right and wrong is simplistic, naive and childish, and that's what these activists are doing.
And, of course, they will point to what they call are atrocities committed by the Israeli state in pursuit of Hamas terrorists. Civilian casualties perhaps are inevitable. But Major Fox, could I ask you about something we talk about a lot on this show, and that is there seems to be a heck of a lot of young people, Greta Thunberg's followers, if you like. Their previous cause was climate change, now been swept into this conflict. Do you worry about the mindset of young people and the potential consequences that could have for security, perhaps on British soil?
I do, and I think we're reaching a point now, and the Hamas war has ripped the bandage off this. We're reaching a point where social media, if we don't get a grip of disinformation and enemy information campaigns, we face potentially an existential threat to the way our society operates. Hamas have had the most sophisticated information operation of all time in support of Gaza. It's been remarkable how they have taken every single casualty in Gaza and turned it into something it's not. And that's not to minimize what's happened in Gaza. Significant numbers of people are suffering, hungry and displaced, and we should acknowledge that. But we should also acknowledge the much wider context in which it sits, the way the IDF operates, and the fact that, unfortunately, the law of armed conflict gives a huge amount of leeway for collateral damage. It doesn't make it right, but it doesn't make it illegal. And these things are nuanced, complicated and difficult. And to simplify this into a social media clip or a selfie absolutely ignores the depths of the problem here and actually takes us no closer to a free Palestine or even a peaceful solution to this whole ongoing dilemma.
OK, well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your expertise, as ever. And that's the Research Fellow of the Henry Jackson Society, Major Andrew Fox. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Now, if you're in search of holiday sun this year, then here is a forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there. It's looking fairly settled across much of the Mediterranean as we go through the next couple of days, turning increasingly hot, especially for parts of Italy. For Iberia and the Canaries, we could just see a few showers around, but plenty of sunshine around too. But as I mentioned, for much of the central parts of the Med, lots of sunshine around, turning increasingly hot here. For parts of Rome, could see highs reaching the mid-30s as we go through the course of the week. And for much of the Med, really, as you can see, plenty of sunshine around.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Next, no police, no problem, because a London couple took matters into their own hands after police refused to help them recover their stolen Jaguar SUV. Guess what? They went and got it back themselves. I'll be joined by one of the jubilant couple next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, controversial classroom materials promoted in schools suggest Stonehenge was built by Black Britons and that Roman Emperor Nero wed a trans woman. This is according to a leading education think tank. Meanwhile, iconic British military triumphs like, I don't know, Waterloo and Trafalgar are being sidelined. This comes as research shows fewer than 1 in 10 schools cover them in the curriculum. Joining me now is the wonderful Bobby Seagull, a fellow West Ham sufferer and always a joy to chat to him. Bobby, lovely to see you this afternoon. However, this story is worrying me slightly. What do you make of it?
There's established fact, and then there's history that's outside the bounds of what most normal people deem as convention or established fact. And that's where we've got to be careful. Dates like 1066, Battle of Hastings, 1215, Magna Carta, 1455, the War of the Roses. These are established facts that children should learn. Other things, again, my family wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the British Empire. So my parents from Kerala in South India, they moved to Britain in the late 70s. So I'm a child of empire, as it were. So I think it's making sure that we teach all children all the key dates in British history and what it means. But also, I think, sensitively, the context of Britain in terms of empire, migration, social change, because we are a diverse country, but I think it's like being careful not to teach contentious, disputed history as established fact. That's where I think we overstep the mark.
So why is this being included in so many schools? I mean, I was astonished the other day when we had the VE Day memorial to hear a mum phone up a radio show and say, my child hasn't been taught anything about it. Oh, that's sad.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. And I love this story because a London couple took matters into their own hands after police refused to help them recover their stolen Jaguar SUV. Now, using an Apple AirTag they had secretly placed inside the vehicle, the pair, who are both lawyers and now sleuths, tracked it down to a street in Chiswick, just 4 miles from the family home, and even managed to retrieve it themselves. It's a beautiful story. And I'm joined now by the victim of that car theft, now triumphant. They've recovered it. Mia Forbes-Pyrie. Mia, welcome to the show. And I believe, are you inside the car itself? You're inside the vehicle that you found yourself. What a beautiful story.
I am inside the car. Hi. Nice to be with you, Martin.
It's a magnificent story. So like a lot of people, they get their phones nicked, they get their iPads nicked, they know where it is, they tell the police don't do anything. You have to take matters into your own hands. You did it, and you're back with your beloved car. You're like a mini Sherlock Holmes. Tell us all about it.
Well, I think it's a tiny bit harsh. Everyone's covered it their way to say the police refused, but my husband's recollection is essentially that when we called 999, they said that they might send a patrol car and they would let us know if they found the car. So I think we were left a bit uncertain about how long this would take, whether they would do it or not. And in that confusion, I thought, well, it's a 9-minute drive. It's 4 miles away. They may just have thrown the AirTags on the floor out of the car, so we may not find the car, but we may find the car. So we got into my very old Polo and drove the 9 minutes down the road and found our car, which was still immobilized. And so we brought it back on a flatbed truck. So yeah, I wouldn't want to be too harsh towards the police, but it was kind of an exciting moment.
But you sprang into action, and I guess, now a lot of people will be thinking, I better get one of those Apple tags in my car, hide it away where a thief won't find it, and you tracked it down and you located the car. It's a fantastic sort of story of people taking matters into their own hands. How have the police been since? I mean, have you let them know you've recovered it, or did they give you like a gold medal?
The police have been very nice. They told us to call 101 if we found the car. So we called it when we found the car. They then basically called us back a few days later once we'd had everything repaired and said that they would like to send someone round to see if there was any evidence. And they think they still might find some evidence under the carpets or things like that. So it will take a while. But I think it's really... it's really
Mia,
tough.
Mia, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much. It's a wonderful story, but we do have some breaking news, and a spokesman for the Met told us this. Officer spoke to the victim, who shared his intention to recover the vehicle himself. An Apple AirTag was inside, allowing the victim to view its location and trace it. The victim was reminded by officers to contact police again as needed, or if police assistance was necessary at the vehicle's location. This investigation is ongoing, and police are working with the victim. No arrests have been made at this stage. Now, some breaking news for you now, and that is this. The author of The Day of the Jackal and the former MI6 agent Frederick Forsyth has died, aged 86. Forsyth brought a reporter's eye to his fiction, transforming the thriller genre with a series of novels, including The Day of the Jackal, The Odessa File and The Dogs of War. Frederick Forsyth sadly has passed away. But don't worry, because up next it's Jubes & Co, 6 p.m, the Queen of Primetime Debate. And here she is. Jubes, what's on your menu?
Martin, well, what a lovely set of books there. You've just prompted me to make a note of some of them. I've always been meaning to get round to reading them. Sadly, I haven't. Look, we've got a lot to discuss on this show tonight. I've got the Shadow Business Secretary joining me, and also a Labour MP that used to be a police officer, which is great because I want to talk about policing in this country. Apparently, But coming from where? Also, of course, we know about the U-turn on the winter food allowance, but it's also been suggested in a report today that state pensions should be means tested. What do you think to this? It's a bit of a Mickey take when you look at how much money we're spending putting young men up in hotels. We've got a lot to discuss. I'll see you in a sec.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine at first today in the south, but mostly cloudy and it's increasingly damp. That rain persisting through the rest of the day across many northern parts of the country because of these weather fronts that are moving in at the moment. High pressure just to the south of the UK, keeping things dry for the time being. But really, as we go into the evening, the rain in the north starts to spill south. It's on and off rain. There will be some heavy bursts for parts of northern England, North Wales. But through the hours of darkness, it does turn light and patchy, drizzly outbreaks of rain more than heavy bursts. And it stays dry to the southeast, drier to the north with showers following the main area of rain. But for most, it's a cloudy and mild night. It's then a dull start to the day across much of England and Wales as these weak weather fronts sink south. We've got extensive low cloud across parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south. Outbreaks of light rain on and off through the morning. Brighter skies for northern England, much of Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some heavy showers for northern Scotland, but in between spells of sunshine and feeling a little fresher behind that area of cloud as it clears to the south. And it's going to feel fairly muggy in the south, I suspect, with the cloud persisting until early afternoon in places. And the drizzly rain will continue as well, but will become increasingly restricted to the south of England after lunchtime. Brighter skies emerge then for the northern two-thirds of the UK. Some fairly widespread sunshine. Temperatures up to 18, 19 Celsius, certainly feeling more pleasant compared with today. But in the south, it's a cloudier picture. Then as we go into Tuesday night, we're going to see a lot of clear skies at first, and that leads us on to a mostly fine Wednesday. It's going to start to feel warmer, and it's going to particularly feel humid on Thursday and Friday with the risk of thundery downpours.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Road disruptions are on the M4 westbound, closed between junctions 41 and 43. Follow diversion routes. Congestion on the M60 in Salford clockwise between junctions 12 and 15 causes delays. In Greater London, a broken-down vehicle obstructs a lane on the M25 anti-clockwise exit at junction 29. A simultaneous issue on the M3 westbound in Surrey between junctions 2 and 3 is due to another vehicle. And on the trains, Chiltern Railways faces disruptions between High Wycombe and Haddenham and Tame Parkway. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh my God. Thank you.
So you weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For a chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on